Chapter 556. My face is hurt. Chu Luqian said matter-of-factly. He reached out and pulled her slender hand over, letting her hand touch his face. Is it really hurt? Then I'll go to light a lamp and apply some medicine. Xiao Wanru subconsciously groped and wanted to push him away to get up. However, her slender waist was held by him, so she could only raise her neck a little. How could she get up? Your Highness. Xiao Wanru pushed his chest and said. Chu Luqian closed his eyes and hugged her tightly in his arms. The body in his arms was soft and had a faint comfortable fragrance, which made him feel very relaxed. Seeing that she was still struggling, he simply pressed her head into his arms and whispered, "Don't move. I'm very tired." Xiao Wanru's head was pressed tightly against his chest. Feeling the rise and fall of his chest, she couldn't move her neck now. Since he was unwilling, it seemed that it was not a big problem. She couldn't get rid of him even if she wanted to. Her slender waist and head were pressed by him, so she couldn't move even if she wanted to. Hearing his calm and even breathing in her ears, Xiao Wanru moved her fingers slightly and found that she could only move a little now. She had no choice but to lie on his chest, motionless, and seemed to fall asleep in a daze. In a daze, she seemed to feel a hand gently sliding through her hair, as if caressing the most precious treasure. The window was slightly open, and the night wind was a little cold. She couldn't help snuggling up to the warm place, and then her breathing became steady. Sensing that Xiao Wanru had fallen asleep, Chu Luqian opened his beautiful eyes, sat up, and carefully put Xiao Wanru on his lap. His eyesight was excellent. Even in the faint moonlight, he could see the beautiful face of the girl in his arms clearly. After quietly watching for a while, he lightly and skillfully planted a kiss on her fair and tender jade-like face. A trace of a smile slowly appeared on his handsome face with a hint of malice and tyranny. A trace of gentleness broke through the tyranny, as if he was that picturesque handsome man in front of others in the past. She picked up Xiao Wanru, walked to the bed, put her down gently, and then covered her with the quilt. She brushed away a few strands of hair that fell on her face, leaned against the bed, and looked down at the little girl on the pillow. Since when did you start having such thoughts? He didn't know. When he first met the little girl who smashed the bridal sedan chair, she was so young but so decisive. At that time, he was really bored and only wanted to find some fun to watch. Regardless of whether it was someone else's entertainment or his own, he, who had completely given up on himself, wouldn't care about his own life in order to have fun. Of course, he wouldn't care about the lives of others. It was such a lively little girl who had barged in, breaking the silence that he had kept for so many years. It made him feel a little more alive. Thinking of how she was not afraid of him when he was so violent just now, the smile on his lips became even more elegant and gentle. He lowered his head and kissed the corner of her lips softly, as if the person in front of him was the most precious thing in his life. In fact, he had asked her for her opinion, and she had agreed at that time. Therefore, even if she wanted to go back on her word, she couldn't. She had been engaged to him 2 years ago, so she could only belong to him. If anyone dared to snatch his treasure, he would definitely let them die without a burial place. He didn't know whether it was because of the heat or because of her bad sleeping posture. Xiao Wanru's fair and tender little hand stretched out of the quilt, moved it twice, and unconsciously put it outside the quilt. It was white and tender, looking very lovely. Since she was so lovely, Chu Luqian felt that he didn't have to be so polite. His face still hurt from the comb just now, so he had to pay for it. He picked up Xiao Wanru's little hand, put it to his lips, and bit it hard. Ah! Xiao Wanru screamed in pain and suddenly sat up. Holding the hand that she had snatched back, she immediately woke up from her half-daze. Your Highness! I'm leaving. Just have a good sleep. Chu Luqian said with a smile. With a push of his fingers, Xiao Wanru, who had just sat up, was pushed down by him. Then she silently watched him turn around and leave. In the dark night, she couldn't see a trace of childish complacency on his handsome face. She moved her body silently, put her hand to her lips, and blew on it. She didn't know how she had bitten it. Was this person really a dog? It was really strange that nothing happened to him after he bit her awake. She turned over and felt sleepy, and her consciousness gradually became blurred. Who knew how many eccentricities this master had? He was a temperamental master. It was really tiring to be his subordinate. Thinking of this, Xiao Wanru didn't know that there was a faint smile on her face at the moment. This time, there was no trace of the dream, and she slept until dawn. Xiao Xuanzi had been waiting in the yard. Finally, he saw his master coming in the night. He stepped forward anxiously, peeked at his face, and said, "Master, your hair is wet. You must wipe it clean. Dr. Qi has come. Let him take your pulse first." "I'm fine." Chu Luchen walked slowly to the steps. "How can you be fine? Your Highness will have a splitting headache in a while. It's not easy for me to treat you, so I don't want you to ruin yourself like this. If you do this again, I'd better leave early, lest I be driven to death by you." Under the tree in the yard, Dr. Qi stood up and said with an unkind face. Anyone who was about to sleep would be in a bad mood when he was pulled up, not to mention that this master was still hurting himself. "I'm really fine." Chu Luchen turned around and walked down the tree. He sat on the stone bench and reached out his hand. "If you don't believe me, you can feel my pulse." Qi Ju was in a bad mood, and reached out to put her hand on his. Xiao Xuanzi came over with a clean handkerchief and wanted to dry the water on his hair. But when he reached out and touched it, he found that it was basically dry. If he hadn't dried it, it should still be wet at this time. He couldn't help smiling and took the handkerchief in his hand. He was as happy as a cat that had stolen a fish. Qi Ju put his hand on it and touched it. After thinking about it carefully, he touched it again in disbelief. Xiao Xuanzi walked in again. Seeing Qi Ju put down his hand, he hurriedly said, "Dr. Qi, how is our master?" "It's not a big deal. He's still the same as before. He just needs to recuperate slowly." Qi Ju looked at Chu Luchen in surprise. He had followed Chu Luchen for a period of time. Of course, he knew that every time he couldn't control his violence, he would have self-abuse behavior, and the next day, he would almost immediately be bedridden. This was also the reason why he had been ill for a long time before. Although it was difficult to get rid of the fetal poison, his erratic illness was another important reason. If he went on like this for a long time, he would inevitably die young. But since 2 years ago, this master had stopped abusing himself and began to treat the disease with peace of mind. Unexpectedly, he started abusing himself again today, which shocked Dr. Qi. He hurried over and found that he was fine. He looked at Xiao Xuanzi in confusion. He thought that Xiao Xuanzi had made a mistake before. Xiao Xuanzi beamed with joy and turned a blind eye to Dr. Qi's doubts. "Master must have gone to see the 5th Mississippi. The 5th Miss is really capable. She actually calms me down. This is a good thing. Does this mean that I will not have uncontrollable self-abuse and violence in the future?" Ignoring Qi Ju's eager look, Xiao Xuanzi said, "Master, it's getting late. You should take a rest first." Chu Luchen nodded and turned to go inside. "Since your Highness is fine, I have something to do. I will also live here these days," Qi Ju said as if it was a matter of course. He had long wanted to come to the Yuhui nunnery, but the prince had always refused to let him. Now there was such a good opportunity, and he did not intend to give up. When he smiled, he was really comparable to Xiao Xuanzi. The same complacency, the same smile like a fox who had stolen a chicken. "How many days do you want to stay here?" Chu Luchen turned his head and glanced at him. Under the light, his handsome eyes were more beautiful than anything else. Even Qi Ju had to admit that this prince's appearance really made all the men in the world feel ashamed. Yes, I will stay for a few days and leave after a few days. If you go down the mountain first, I will stay for a while. It's rare for me to come to the Yuhui nunnery. I heard that although the Yuhui nunnery also receives male pilgrims, there are many rules. This place is excellent, excellent. Qi Ju reached out and touched the stone table. Of course, Chu Luchen was fine. He had to think of his own business. On the way here, he also saw clearly that this was already the inside of the Yuhui nunnery. Men were basically not allowed to come here. Only the noble descendants like Chu Luchen were allowed to live here in the middle of the night. If he didn't take advantage of the situation to live here, he would not be called Qi Ju. Not far away, he also saw clearly that it seemed to be the place where the nuns lived. He didn't know which courtyard Mingqiu lived in. But no matter which courtyard she lived in, it must be in the Yuhui nunnery. Thinking of this, Qi Ju felt happy and had to thank Xiao Xuanzi for using a reason to call him over. For this reason, Xiao Xuanzi became more and more pleasing to the eye. He thought that Xiao Xuanzi had asked him for a pill before, and he would make it for him when he was free. If you want to live here, you can do it after I leave, and you are not allowed to live for too long. Chu Luchen squinted at him and walked to the main room. Xiao Xuanzi followed him closely. Okay, I will follow your order. Qi Ju nodded happily. Chu Luchen didn't pay attention to the man who was laughing so hard that he almost became silly. After entering the inner room, Xiao Xuanzi could see more clearly under the light. His master's hair was indeed dry, and it seemed that he would not get sick again. His smile almost overflowed on his face. He turned his eyes to Chu Liuchen's face, wanting to see his face. But when he saw the marks on his face, his heart skipped a beat, and his face suddenly turned pale. She threw herself in front of Chu Luchen, grabbed his robe, knelt down, and cried in horror, "Master, what happened to your face? What is this? Who took something and scratched your face?" Chapter 557. Chu Luchen touched his face and couldn't help laughing. He said lazily, "It's too late. I'm going to sleep." "Master, the wound on your face." Xiao Xuanzi said anxiously when he saw him go in carelessly. "I'm tired. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Come and serve me." Chu Luchen said lightly and leisurely. Xiao Xuanzi blinked and got up in confusion. Why did he feel that his master was not angry and seemed to be quite satisfied? While taking off his master's wide robe, he peeped at Chu Liuchen's face. Xiao Xuanzi confirmed again that his master was really not angry. He slightly raised the corners of his mouth with a smile. "Master, let me apply some ointment for you." After helping Chu Luchen lie down, Xiao Xuanzi took a bottle of ointment from Dr. Qi and said carefully. "Oh." Chu Luchen closed his eyes. Xiao Xuanzi carefully applied ointment for Chu Luchen. When he finished, he found that Chu Luchen had fallen asleep and slept soundly. In the past, when he couldn't control his violence, he couldn't fall asleep all night. Was it because he was too tired today or because of something else? If it was because of something else, Xiao Xuanzi felt that he could respect 5th Miss Xiao more. After dealing with Chu Liuchen's injury, Xiao Xuanzi left quietly. After standing outside the door for a while, he asked someone to deal with tomorrow's affairs. This was what His Highness had asked him to do before. It happened that there was still time. Duke Xing's mansion was really arrogant. Xiao Wanru looked at the bite mark on her hand in a daze. Once again, she confirmed that what happened last night was not a dream. Chu Luchen really came. Not only did he come, but he also bit her with a lot of strength. Her white and tender hand was bruised and swollen, but the bite mark faded a lot. If she hadn't remembered what happened last night, she would have thought that she accidentally threw her hand on the edge of the bed in her sleep and hit it, just like Yuru and others. Yujie was still nagging, "Miss, be careful when you sleep. Look at your bruised hand, how can you write and copy scriptures later?" Xiao Wanru clenched her hand slightly and felt a little pain. She couldn't use her strength at the moment. With her hair still a little messy, she didn't understand why Chu Luchen went crazy yesterday. After Yujie finished applying the medicine for her, she took a handkerchief and tied it up for her. Then she helped her get out of bed. Looking at the tightly bandaged handkerchief and then at herself in the makeup mirror with a blank look, Xiao Wanru felt that she had woken up. As expected, Chu Luchen went crazy and came to her place yesterday. She kindly dried his hair, but he bit her. There were only 2 sentences in his mind. Good people don't get rewarded. His teeth are really good. Yujie combed her hair and said, Miss, don't touch water these days. It's swollen. If you're not careful, it will fester. This medicine was given by Mingxiu Nun before, but it's almost used up. I'll ask Mingxiu Nun for some more later. Although they all lived in the Yuhui nunnery, Xiao Wanru didn't get close to Mingxiu Nun if it was not necessary. Most of the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery knew that Mingxiu Nun, who was single in the Yuhui nunnery, had excellent medical skills. Moreover, she was treating nobles, so there were many people who wanted to curry favor with her. Although the nuns lived in a relatively peaceful nunnery, they were also human beings, so they naturally had all kinds of relationships. They liked, rejected, and hated other nuns, and even formed different small groups. This was a phenomenon that Xiao Wanru discovered after she came to the Yuhui nunnery for more than 2 years. As an outsider, it was difficult for Mingxiu Nun to integrate into the nunnery. However, because she was good at medical skills, it was relatively easy for her to get a good impression. People ate all kinds of grains, so how could they not get sick? There were nuns who knew some medical skills before, but they couldn't compare with Mingxiu Nun at all. Therefore, Mingxiu Nun was still very popular in the Yuhui nunnery. In addition, it was said that she would go down the mountain to treat nobles in the capital city every once in a while, which made her value 100 times higher. The nuns couldn't find out who the nobles were. They only knew that it was a noble person who couldn't be known by ordinary people. Someone in the capital city had specially come to talk to the abbess of the Yuhui nunnery about it, and the abbess of the Yuhui nunnery had specially ordered the nuns not to ask about it. The abbess of the Yuhui nunnery's words made people feel that Mingxiu Nun's identity was unusual, so they didn't dare to offend her. Sister Yujie, I'll go. Anyway, I'm free now. Chu Lu said with a smile. Well, I want a bottle of this. If you can't explain it clearly, take this bottle with you. Mingxiu Nun will know it. Yujie nodded, reached out with a comb on the table, and said. Okay, I'll go now. Chu Lu walked over, picked up the bottle of ointment that had been used up, and turned to go out. When she was at the door, she almost bumped into Qing, who had rushed in. Fortunately, Qing, reacted quickly. She turned slightly to avoid Chu Lu, and then held Chu Li's shoulder to avoid the force just now. Sister Chu Lu, be careful. Chu Lu held the door frame to steady herself. When she saw that it was Qing, she said angrily, You little girl, what are you doing in such a hurry? Miss, something happened in the Buddha hall again. Qing, took a breath, let go of Chu Lu, and came in to report. After digging out the evil bracelets in the Buddha hall, they had not touched it again. It was said that the place was weird and seemed to be chilly even in the daytime. The nuns stopped going there, and Duke Xing's mansion stopped digging it. The personnel of the Ministry of Justice thought that there would be nothing related to them there. The nuns even secretly spread the rumor that the hall might have been contaminated with evil spirits. Otherwise, how could it suddenly be struck by lightning on a thunderstorm night? Moreover, it was even set on fire. When they were digging, they even dug out black ants crawling with insects. In such a place, it was easier for people to think that it was ominous. There were even faint rumors that the fifth miss was indeed born with an ominous appearance. As for the master of the Baiyun Taoist temple, not many people knew about it at this time. However, even if the thing about Daoist Xiushui was exposed later, there might still be people who didn't believe it and thought that Xiao Wanru was born with an ominous appearance. At that time, there were many people who saw the silver bracelets. The theory of ghosts and immortals was mysterious. If someone deliberately made use of it, it might be possible to ruin Xiao Wanru's reputation. After all, Xiao Wanru's biological father and mother were indeed dead. Therefore, Xiao Wanru asked Qing, to pay more attention to what happened in the Buddha hall and felt that it was not over yet. What's the matter? Hearing Qing's words, Xiao Wanru calmly glanced at Qing, in the mirror and asked. A lot of black ants ran out of the Buddha hall in large groups. It was so scary. Ching gasped and said. They ran out of the Buddha hall. Where did they go? Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. They all ran to the previous offerings. Weren't there some steamed buns, pastries, and so on in the previous offerings? I don't know if it was because of the strong wind yesterday that some of the bricks on them fell down. I happened to see these. There were ants crawling on them, and people were scared when they saw them. Ching gestured with her hands to show that there were many ants. Didn't they throw all the ones dug out before? Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice and asked, the ones dug out at that time were all good, and there were no ants on them. When digging out the silver bracelets, they inevitably dug out some pastries and so on. The old maids threw all of them away. Xiao Wanru deliberately asked Ching to take some crumbs back and check them. At that time, there were no ants on these pastries, which was also the reason why everyone was shocked when her bracelets were dug out. There were no ants on the pastries, but why were there ants on the silver bracelets? But in fact, it was very simple. There was something wrong with the pastries made by Duke Xing's mansion. There was no sugar in them and there was no sweetness in them. Therefore, there were ants on the bracelets stained with honey, but there were no ants on the pastries, which made Xiao Wanru's bracelets even more evil. There were no ants before, but now there were ants. It was very interesting. I don't know. There are many people here now. Do you want to go and have a look? Ching thought that this was a great opportunity to clarify for her master. Only when everyone was talking about it could it be spread more widely. Okay, I'll go and have a look. Xiao Wanru nodded and narrowed her eyes. This was a good opportunity for her. It was a great opportunity for her to clear her name. At this time, she had already finished grooming, changed into a simple black robe, and put on a veil. This time, it was not a curtain hat, revealing a pair of bright and clear watery eyes. There was a hint of purity in her eyes, and just one glance was enough to make people have a good impression. Her hair was simply tied up with a bamboo hairpin, and in the midst of her beautiful black hair, such a simple color added a bit of elegance to it. She took Yujie and Ching to the main hall. Before they got there, she saw many nuns standing aside and pointing at them, and some pilgrims were watching the fun. Although there were not many people from the Ministry of Justice left, they seemed to be attracted here because of this matter, and several of them stood there to check. Fifth sister, you're here. A soft voice came from not far away. Xiao Wanru looked up and saw Xiao Yenru, who was also wearing a light veil. She smiled calmly and said, Big sister, you're so early. Since they came back yesterday, they hadn't talked to each other. However, when they talked at this moment, they looked very natural, as if they had a really good relationship. I just came. I wanted to call you before, fifth sister, but I was afraid that I would disturb your rest. Xiao Yenru explained softly and came over to stand beside Xiao Wanru. The two of them were like a pair of sisters. Although they were both covered with a light veil, everyone could see that there were two beauties under the veil from their bright watery eyes. Qiu Yu stood aside and looked at Xiao Yenru and then at Xiao Wanru. He was about to come forward to greet them, but he stopped. He felt that he couldn't recognize which one was the first Miss Xiao. When Shiqi went down the mountain to take charge of the affairs of the Baiyun Taoist temple, so he temporarily took charge here. Just now, he also brought some people here. Now seeing the two sisters, he was happy to come over and greet them. However, he suddenly found that the two pairs of eyes under the light veil were equally beautiful, and the unfamiliar pair was faintly more beautiful. However, he felt that the slightly inferior pair was the first Miss Xiao. However, this was different from what he had imagined. The first Miss Xiao was the first beauty in the capital city, and the one with more beautiful and charming eyes should be her. Chapter 558. Your Excellency, there are many ants like this on the mountain. They must have smelled the sweetness of the pastries and come here. A member of the Ministry of Justice ran over and reported to Qiu Yu. Qiu Yu coughed in a low voice. At this time, it was inappropriate for him to come over and greet the Shao sisters. There were pastries before, but why weren't there so many ants? Moreover, the ants are so big, much bigger than those at the foot of the mountain. He asked with a frown. Well, it may be because they haven't been placed for a long time, or it may be because the pastries were not so sweet before. As for such big ants, they are unique to this mountain and much bigger than those at the foot of the mountain. The member of the Ministry of Justice who came to report said. Hearing what they said, those who knew what had happened couldn't help talking about it. They hadn't guessed in this direction, so of course, they wouldn't have guessed the reason. Now that the same thing happened, of course, everyone followed this line of thought, especially when it was the member of the Ministry of Justice who said this. Xiao Wanru glanced at Qing-er, and Qing-er understood. She took a few steps forward, squeezed to Qiu Yu's side, and said angrily, Your Excellency, can you help my miss to find out why there are so many ants on my miss's silver bracelet, but there are no ants on other misses' and child's silver bracelets? Could it be that someone wants to harm my miss? Qing-er still looked like a little maid. She didn't look very tall, and she looked a little naive. Her voice was quite loud. Hearing her words, many people who had been talking stopped talking and looked at Qing-er. Who is your miss? Qiu Yu coughed in a low voice and had to ask. My miss is the 5th miss of Duke Xing's mansion. The one whose silver bracelet was dug out and covered with ants was my Mississippi. Your Excellency, as a member of the Ministry of Justice, you must know a lot. Can you help my miss to find out who wants to harm my miss by smearing molasses on her bracelet? Qing-er looked at Qiu Yu expectantly with a little naive persistence, as if he would definitely be able to say something. Qiu Yu turned his head uneasily in the direction of the Shao sisters and smiled awkwardly. He felt that he still couldn't recognize which one was the first Miss Shao. Milord. Qing called him again when she saw him turning his head absent-mindedly. Hearing her repeated questions, everyone's attention fell on Qiu Yu, hoping that he could give a reason. Being stared at by so many people, Qiu Yu became more and more uncomfortable. He could only say, this. I might have to go to your mansion to check. For such a thing to happen, it should have been painted in the mansion. On one side, there were so many people watching, and on the other side, there was the beauty he liked waiting for an answer. Of course, Qiu Yu couldn't say that he didn't know at this time, so he could only answer vaguely. But he didn't know that Qing had changed the topic. He was sure that there must be honey on the silver bracelet. So it was true. Many people had also secretly said that the 5th miss of Duke Xing's mansion was very evil. Could it be that she was really a jinx? They all thought that they should stay away from her, otherwise they might also be unlucky at some time. At this time, the officials of the Ministry of Justice said that the 5th Miss's silver bracelet had been secretly painted by someone in the mansion. They immediately understood that someone really wanted to ruin the 5th Miss's reputation, and it turned out that the person was from Duke Xing's mansion. Who could be so vicious to do such a thing to a dutiful daughter who had lived on the mountain for so long and observed mourning for her parents? Qiu Yu's reply could be regarded as clearing Xiao Wanru's name in front of everyone. Xiao Yanru trembled with anger and glared at Qiu Yu fiercely. She only felt that the person in front of her was really hopelessly stupid. He actually helped Xiao Wanru to clear up the matter. Most of the people on the mountain were nuns, but there were also many pilgrims. Although it was taboo for pilgrims to go up the mountain because of what had happened before, there were still some pilgrims going up the mountain because of the reputation of the Yuhui nunnery. After hearing the news, they all talked about it and guessed who had done it to the 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. It didn't seem like it. Even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. Although the 5th Miss was not her son, she was her biological granddaughter. She couldn't be so vicious, could she? Then it must be Madam of Duke Xing. It was said that Madam of Duke Xing had been at odds with the 5th Miss Xiao, but she was too vicious. She was an orphan without parents, was forced out of Duke Xing's mansion, and had to live in the nunnery to observe mourning for her parents. What else could she do? Did such a person really deserve to be Madam of Duke Xing? After many rumors came out, they matched with the previous rumors. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it made sense. Xiao Yanru was so angry that her face changed. She crumpled the handkerchief in her hand into a ball and almost crumbled it. She didn't expect that Xiao Wanru, who usually looked silly, would ask such a tricky question, and Qiu Yu was stupid enough to step into it. Needless to say, Xiao Wanru must have taught her well. Fifth sister, what do you mean? Xiao Yanru lowered her voice and said coldly. Big sister, what do you mean? Xiao Wanru said softly, watching Qing continue to pester Qiu Yu endlessly and ask questions. Qing who cleaned the courtyard that day, was an inferior servant girl. Qiu Yu still didn't know whose servant girl Qing was. Fifth sister, although my mother didn't raise you, she treats you well. Previously, when you were in Qing's mansion, my mother repeatedly showed her kindness to you. Later, she even gave you the best courtyard in the mansion. Now, what you said as a servant girl, are you deliberately framing my mother? Xiao Yanru said coldly, and she was so angry that she couldn't suppress her anger. Big sister, what are you talking about? I just asked Qing to ask the official of the Ministry of Justice what the truth is. Why did you say that she did something to second aunt? Could it be that you know something, or that Qing asked something that can't be said in the mansion? Xiao Wanru said calmly and raised the corners of her mouth silently under the veil. She would be too stupid if she didn't seize such a good opportunity to clear her name. Because of Qiu Yu's identity, it became an official statement, which was different from the rumors outside. The official of the Ministry of Justice made the statement in front of everyone. Even if Duke Xing's mansion would not deal with it formally, the truth would be revealed. Old Madam was too sick to get up now, so she put off the matter of the bracelets. Even if she got up later, she would only find a scapegoat, and then explain and clear her name, indicating that they would deal with it and give her justice. But in fact, it would not have any substantial effect. Because of the low status of the scapegoat, there would even be rumors that the people of Duke Xing's mansion deliberately asked someone to cover it up for her. Originally, she had thought of a backup plan, but now she didn't need it. Your Excellency, the bracelets were handled by Old Madam and Madam of our mansion. Who do you think did this to our miss? Qing still stared at Qiu Yu and asked with a blank face. At this time, Qiu Yu also noticed that something was wrong. He took 2 steps back and said with a slightly serious face, you can go back to the mansion to investigate this matter. I still have to handle the case here. You'd better go back. Although Qiu Yu was unhappy, he still felt that he had to show some respect to the first Miss Xiao. Although the servant girl asked the question on behalf of the 5th Miss Xiao, he couldn't guarantee that she was the first Miss Xiao's servant and came here to ask the question on behalf of the 5th Miss Xiao. However, the question sounded a little weird when he thought about it carefully. Your Excellency, this. Qing still wanted to say something, but Qiu Yu waved his hand and 2 people from the Ministry of Justice came over and pushed her away from Qiu Yu. Since it was found out that there was nothing unusual here and that it was just ants crawling on sugar, the Ministry of Justice had nothing to do. Qiu Yu waved his hand and left with a group of people from the Ministry of Justice. When passing by the Xiao sisters, Qiu Yu stopped for a moment and said goodbye to them. Then he bowed deeply to Xiao Wanru and turned to leave. Xiao Yanru's face turned pale and then green. She would not forget how attentive Qiu Yu was to her before, nor would she forget how Qiu Yu protected her. Although she didn't like Qiu Yu, it didn't mean that Qiu Yu could ignore her like this. Seeing that the people from the Ministry of Justice left, the onlookers also left in 2s and 3s while discussing. The matter had been made clear. Someone wanted to frame the 5th Miss Xiao, and the person who did it was the one in power of Duke Xing's mansion. According to the servant girl's question, the person who handled the offering was either Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion or Madam of Duke Xing. But which one was it? Some people guessed this, while others guessed that. Because of the excitement of guessing, many people brought this topic down the mountain and asked others to guess it for them. As for whether anyone doubted the truth of this matter, the onlookers all thought it ridiculous. Since the officials of the Ministry of Justice said that someone framed the 5th Miss, of course it was true. Xiao Yanru stared at Xiao Wanru coldly with sharp eyes and said, "Fifth sister's servant girl is really bold. How dare she frame grandma? Big sister, you must be joking. I just asked this inferior servant girl to go forward and ask. How could it become a framing? If it was really a framing, why didn't you explain just now?" Xiao Wanru smiled sweetly and asked softly. There were so many people just now. If Xiao Yanru could go forward and explain in person, with her cunning, she could certainly explain for old Madam and Madam of Duke Xing. However, this might also make others suspect her, and her flawless reputation might be affected. How could the selfish Xiao Yanru dare to gamble with her good reputation? Xiao Wanru knew that she wouldn't do that. She didn't say it before. Even if she said that Qing framed her now, it would be useless. She raised the corners of her mouth silently and asked meaningfully, "Big sister, I have something to do and have to leave first. I won't accompany you to enjoy the scenery here." After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave with the two servant girls. "Xiao Wanru, stop!" Xiao Yanru said with hatred. Her voice was not loud but extremely sharp. Fortunately, there were only a few nuns left here. They just glanced at her in surprise and then didn't look at her anymore. Xiao Wanru stopped and turned around slightly. "Big sister, is there anything else? Is this your idea?" Xiao Yanru looked at Xiao Wanru with sharp eyes, as if she must force Xiao Wanru to give an answer. Chapter 559. Xiao Yanru's eyes were as sharp as a knife. She looked at Xiao Wanru gloomily and almost couldn't control the expression on her face. After a long while, she calmed down, walked slowly to Xiao Wanru's side, and said with a serious face, "Fifth sister, no matter whether you have any misunderstanding about my mother and grandmother or not, you have to remember that we are a family. If you have anything to say, you'd better talk about it in private. Otherwise, it's not good for anyone to be hurt." "Big sister, do you mean it?" Xiao Wanru turned around and said with a faint look in her eyes. Xiao Yanru looked more and more sincere. She sighed in a low voice, held Xiao Wanru's hand, and said softly, "Of course, I'm sincere. No matter what you think, fifth sister, just tell me. If you can get rid of the suspicion, it will be a blessing for our mansion. We can't have a quarrel like what others say. If you have a quarrel, others will only say that you are unfilial." She looked as sincere as possible, and her eyes seemed to be able to speak. She behaved in a dignified and decent manner, which was a rare image of an elder sister. She didn't look like she couldn't control her anger just now. Or it could be said that she just couldn't control her anger just now, but didn't really have any bad intention. Xiao Yanru was perfect in all aspects. Even if she couldn't control her anger just now, it could be explained. After all, her biological mother and grandmother were affected by Qing's words. It was possible for her, as a daughter and granddaughter, to lose her composure in a moment of anger. As expected, he was amazing. His acting skills were really natural. "Big sister, I want to know about the silver bracelet. Who smeared the sugar on my silver bracelet? Why did he smear it only on me but not on other brothers and sisters? And about the longevity lock. The longevity lock was also given to me by my grandmother at that time. Why did it also smear sweet sugar on it?" Xiao Wanru looked a little moved, looked a little better, and said bluntly after thinking for a while. "Fifth sister, even if you don't tell me about it, I will find out the truth. I returned to the mansion in a hurry this time. I was worried that you would be lonely on the mountain, so I came back in a hurry and didn't have time to ask my mother. But I think there should be a conclusion in a few days, so I can't let you be wronged." Xiao Yanru said with a serious face. After saying that, she turned sideways and bowed deeply to Xiao Wanru. "I apologize to you on behalf of my mother. It's my mother's negligence that we haven't found out the person who framed you yet." Xiao Wanru leaned to one side and avoided Xiao Yanru's bow. Xiao Wanru, as a younger sister, how could she accept her elder sister's bow generously? "Big sister, you don't deserve it. Big deal. big sister is as big as you, big sister Xiao, you. As. Xiao Yenru as Shay Yenri as I Shay Weiner Yenner sister Xiao Yenru. She as Shat Xiao Yenru, his as Xiao, as, he Sha. Yan Yenru. Xiao. Yes, that's right. Don't worry, fifth sister. Xiao Yenru nodded repeatedly. Now that they had talked it over, they walked back together affectionately. Fifth sister, did you hurt your hand? But what happened? Xiao Yenru glanced at Xiao Wanru and asked in surprise when she found the handkerchief tied around Xiao Wanru's hand. Xiao Wanru waved her hand in the air and said with some embarrassment, I was careless when I was sleeping. I moved my hands and feet and hit the wall. Fifth sister, be careful. Many houses built by the Yuhui nunnery are made of stones. How can it not hurt when you hit a stone? Xiao Yenru said with concern. She reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's hand and check it, but she missed Xiao Wanru's hand in the air. Xiao Wanru picked up her hand and blew at the corner of her mouth childishly. Big sister, don't worry. I'm fine. While they were talking, they had reached a place where there was a change. Xiao Yenru stopped and said, Fifth sister, I'm going to see Pushun Nun. She will go to the palace today or tomorrow. I'm afraid it will be difficult to see her in the future. Pushun Nun first said that she was going to paint, and then she said that she was going to the palace. Although the Empress Dowager didn't say when Pushun Nun would live in the imperial palace, she didn't know when she could see Pushun Nun since the schedule hadn't been set yet. As a disciple who had actually learned painting, Xiao Yenru should see her off at this time. However, Xiao Yenru had time to watch the fun here just now and had no time to see Pushun Nun. It could be imagined how precious her kindness was. Of course, it was not only today. When she came back yesterday, it was still early. Xiao Yenru also stayed in the courtyard early and didn't go out. She didn't show any reluctance for Pushun Nun. That's right. Big sister, please go ahead. Xiao Wanru took a step to the side and said with a smile as if she didn't feel anything wrong. Since her big sister could bear the fire and wanted to pretend to have a deep sisterly relationship with her, she didn't object. After all, she was still observing morning on the mountain and didn't want to make any trouble with her sisterly relationship. She turned her watery eyes and looked thoughtfully in the direction where Xiao Yenru left. Then she took the two maids back. She was not in a hurry to go back. When she reached the gate of the courtyard, she didn't go in. Instead, she turned a corner and walked along the high wall. There were so many people in the Ministry of Justice before, so she hadn't come out for a walk for several days. Now there were less than half of the people of the Ministry of Justice left in the Yuhui nunnery, and many places were not as monitored as before. Walking along the high wall, she still saw the small side door on that day. Several nuns were standing outside the side door. In the past, they were in the courtyard outside the side door at this time and basically wouldn't come out if there was nothing important. Xiao Wanru had gone there many times, and she rarely saw the nuns guarding the side door. But now they were much more vigilant. Several stout nuns' eyes fell on Xiao Wanru. Fortunately, Xiao Wanru had lived here for a period of time. Even if these nuns hadn't seen her before, they had heard of her. Seeing her coming over, they all put their palms together and bowed. Xiao Wanru also bowed sideways and then slowly passed by. After what had happened before, it was not so easy to enter the door. Not only was it difficult to enter, but it would also be very eye-catching to pass by. When she first came to the Yuhui nunnery, Chu Luqian had told her some things, but she hadn't accomplished any of them yet. Along the way, she stopped at the gate of a small courtyard. Looking at the lock on the door, it seemed that no one lived here. Where are the people here? Xiao Wanru approached and took a look. This was the courtyard where Mo Chioi lived. She had lived on the mountain for almost 5 years. Even if she was not here at this time, the door would not be locked. There were few people in the nunnery, not to mention there were even fewer people here. It seems that she has left. I heard that when the officers left, they also left with her. Ching thought for a while and said, I saw someone when I passed by before. Miss, if you want to know, I'll go and inquire about it later. No need. Xiao Wanru shook her head, turned around and continued to walk forward. She was not very interested in Mo Chui. If she hadn't knelt in front of her grandma, she wouldn't even have the intention to ask about her. That day, she was anxious to send her fellow villager down the mountain and wanted to borrow her grandma's carriage, but her grandma didn't agree. Now everything that happened to Mo Chui had nothing to do with her. Whether it was the remnants of the previous dynasty or the son of the former emperor, it had nothing to do with her. In her eyes, Mo Chui was just a woman who had cultivated in seclusion on the mountain for 5 years, while she had also cultivated in seclusion for more than 2 years. Since they were cultivating in seclusion, they should take care of their own business and wouldn't be familiar with each other. In this case, she could just forget about them. She had a feeling that Mo Chui was very paranoid and not a person who could get along well. Since she was not easy to get along with and it was not necessary for her to get along with her, it would be best if she didn't ask about them. Xiao Wanru thought so and continued to walk forward casually. She thought that she would not have a chance to meet Mo Chui again. However, it didn't take long for them to meet again in the capital city. However, when they met again, their identities were different. Her own courtyard was still there. She pushed open the slightly closed door and entered with 2 servant girls. As soon as she entered, she saw Xiao Xuanzi's smiling face. Xiao Wanru took 2 steps back to the door and looked at the courtyard in astonishment. This was her courtyard. Yes. 5th Miss, come in quickly. Our master has been waiting for you for a long time. After saying goodbye to you, he will go back in the afternoon. Xiao Xuanzi came out happily and said with a smile. He reached out to lead Xiao Wanru in. His eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's slightly raised face, and his smile became more sincere and flattering. One of them had hurt her hand, while the other had hurt her face. They were so suitable. Xiao Wanru looked around. If someone found Chu Luqian in her courtyard, it would not be a good thing. Even if she was not there, it would not sound good. 5th Miss, don't worry. No one will see it. I have asked someone to check it. 5th Miss, please. Xiao Xuanzi knew what Xiao Wanru was worried about at first glance, so he said with a smile. Xiao Wanru had no choice but to walk in. The 2 servant girls also followed her in and the door of the courtyard was closed. You can stay here. Xiao Wanru told the 2 servant girls and then followed Xiao Xuanzi into her main room like a guest. Especially when she saw Chu Luqian lying on her couch in a dignified manner, she felt extremely aggrieved. Of course, when she saw a few slight swollen marks on Chu Luqian's handsome and flawless face, her aggrieved feeling immediately melted away like the spring breeze and rain. Chu Luqian's face was extremely handsome. Even his cousins couldn't compare with him. Moreover, when he smiled gently, his handsomeness made people feel that he was as beautiful as jade and unparalleled in the world. His skin was light, and although it was pale, it was more like a beautiful jade. Now the beautiful jade was flawed, and the marks on it were red and swollen, which inexplicably made Xiao Wanru feel guilty. She saw Chu Luqian leaning on the couch lazily. His eyes were slightly closed, and a book was casually dropped on the ground. He looked as natural as if he were in his own bedroom. She looked behind her with fluttering eyes and found that Xiao Xuanzi had already left. It was so quiet in the room that she could hear her own breathing. This situation was a little not good. Xiao Wanru instinctively took a few steps back and peeped at the person on the couch. Seeing that the person on the couch did not wake up, she turned around and carefully walked out. Chapter 560. Xiao Wanru suddenly stopped and turned around with some difficulty. He had to find something to do, not to mention that he did have something to do at the moment, so she was in the wrong. She complained in her heart. She had wanted to slip away when he was not paying attention, but now she couldn't hide here. Your Highness, you're awake. I left just now because I was afraid of disturbing your rest. Xiao Wanru bowed to Chu Luchen from a distance and then stood still. Chu Luchen stretched out his hand and hooked his finger at her. Xiao Wanru had no choice but to walk over. When she approached Chu Luchen, before she could say anything, Chu Luchen had reached out to grab her hand and pulled her to sit on the couch unsteadily. I'm going back to the Imperial Palace to report to Imperial Grandmother later. If Imperial Grandmother sees the scar on my face, how should I explain it? Chu Luchen said leisurely. He leaned back and let go of Xiao Wanru's hand, looking elegant and indifferent. As she sat closer, she could see it more clearly. There were several obvious and neat scars, which made his handsome face as white as jade look like a beautiful jade that had been damaged. Even Xiao Wanru felt that she had hit him hard in a daze last night. If the Empress Dowager saw it, she would be very distressed. Your Highness, there was no light at night. I didn't see it clearly, so I accidentally combed your face. But at that time, I was kind, trying to help you. Xiao Wanru swallowed her saliva and defended herself carefully. So I brought this upon myself. Chu Liuchen's eyes dimmed, and his long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, showing a threatening look that made Xiao Wanru's heart palpitate. No, I was careless. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and felt that it was better not to shirk the responsibility. This temperamental man might do whatever he wanted to do. Since you accidentally hurt me, you have to compensate me, right? Chu Luchen snorted coldly. What do you want, Your Highness? Xiao Wanru felt that it was better for her to accept the punishment, so she asked bluntly. What a big tone. Could it be that you can have whatever this king wants? Xiao Wanru shivered and quickly shook her head. She pointed to the surrounding scenery and said, I've been on this mountain for more than 2 years. Everything here is just what is in this room. Moreover, a large part of it originally belongs to the Yuhui nunnery. If Your Highness asks for something that I don't have here, I can't help you. Anyone in this house can do that. Chu Luchen looked sideways at her with interest. The coldness on his face faded away, and a smile appeared on his face. Xiao Wanru looked around. This room was hers, and some of her belongings were also in this room. Except for the tables and chairs provided by the Yuhui nunnery, everything in this room was indeed hers. She didn't live here often, so there was nothing precious here. Xiao Wanru didn't believe that Chu Luchen would take a fancy to the things in this room. Prince Chen was not easy to fool. Your Highness, what do you mean? Xiao Wanru felt that she had to make it clear, lest she said something boastful and made the gloomy prince angry again. I think the things in your room are very good. They will belong to me in the future. Is that okay? Chu Luchen said casually and raised his eyes to look at Xiao Wanru. Everything in this room belonged to him. Xiao Wanru was stunned. She glanced at her room and didn't understand why he liked these ordinary things in this room. When she glanced at a cabinet, her face suddenly turned red. She still had some clothes that she hadn't taken away. When she lived in the Yuhui nunnery, she only wore some black clothes. Although she didn't bring many clothes up to the mountain, she still had some. Later, she couldn't wear them anymore. Every time Rui and Great Elder Princess went up the mountain, she would make some new clothes for her. She didn't wear them, so she just put them in this cabinet. The clothes in this cabinet were not only outer clothes, but also some underwear. Don't worry. I don't want your clothes. Remember, everything in this room belongs to me. Chu Luchen also glanced at the cabinet. He was not surprised that she suddenly blushed and raised his eyebrows with a smile. I will go down the mountain in a while with this Pushun nun. I heard that this Pushun nun is also a miss from an aristocratic family. But she encountered difficulties in her childhood, so she entered the temple to cultivate. She has cultivated for so many years. After laughing, Chu Luchen changed the topic and reached out to take a scroll of painting from the table beside the couch. This is a painting of Guanyin by Pushun nun. Keep it and have a look. If you find anything, tell me. This is also counted as what you owe me. Xiao Wanru reached out to take it and slowly opened it. A vivid painting of Guanyin was displayed in front of her. It was a painting of a thousand-hand Guanyin. However, this thousand-hand Guanyin was different from the current female Guanyin. It was a male Guanyin. Xiao Wanru had lived in the Yuhui nunnery for so long and had read a lot of Buddhist scriptures. She knew that the Guanyin in the illustrations of some ancient Buddhist scriptures was a male. However, no matter in the nunnery or in the Buddhist hall, everyone painted a female Guanyin. Therefore, the current people basically painted a female Guanyin. She had never found a male Guanyin in the illustrations outside the Buddhist scriptures. This painting was painted by Pushun Nun very carefully. The shades were harmonious, and the colors were very smooth. Guanyin, although it was a man, it was also kind and gave people a good impression at first glance. Your Highness, do you think there is something wrong with this painting? Xiao Wanru frowned slightly. Except that the male Guanyin was a little eye-catching, she really couldn't see anything wrong with this painting. This was originally left by Pushun Nun for the first miss in your mansion. Just now when she sent people, she met my people. My people sent away the nun who sent the painting and brought it here. You can take a look at it for me. Chu Luchen closed his handsome eyes again and said casually. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. Did Pushun Nun leave it to Xiao Yenru? In fact, she had always felt that Pushun Nun didn't seem to be what she showed. Pushun Nun was quiet and weak, and she devoted herself to cultivation. She had lived in the Yuhui nunnery for so long, but she had only seen Pushun Nun a few times. She heard from the nuns in the nunnery that Pushun Nun was the most ascetic in the whole nunnery. If there was nothing important, she would never step out of her meditation room. Even if she was invited by the abbess of the Yuhui nunnery, she had to finish chanting the scriptures before leaving. It could be said that no one and nothing could distract her. Her heart of cultivation was extremely firm, and there was no other person as firm as her in the entire Yuhui nunnery. However, such a person was so congenial to Xiao Yenru that she didn't hesitate to delay her own ascetic cultivation time to teach Xiao Yenru painting. Was it really because Xiao Yenru was so good at covering up that Pushun Nun was moved and would rather delay her own ascetic cultivation time to teach Xiao Yenru diligently? It was said that when Xiao Yenru was in her silence room that day, Pushun Nun came here every day. Was there really no other factor in it? After thinking for a while, Xiao Wanru asked, "Is this painting for Big Sister?" "Just give it to her. It's useless to keep it with me. If you want to see it, you can give it to her later. Just tell her that I forgot it and send it to her later." Chu Luchen raised the corners of his thin lips and said with an elegant smile. "Your Highness, then I will give it to her the next day. I will tell her that your Highness sent someone to bring it here in the evening." It was Qing, who received it and gave it to her the next day because it was too late. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and asked tentatively. "If you really like it, you don't have to give it to her." Chu Luchen opened his eyes slightly and looked at Xiao Wanru. His eyes were as clear as water, with a kind of gentleness that she couldn't see through. Xiao Wanru's heart involuntarily skipped a beat. She turned her head away in a hurry and said, "It's not good not to give it to her. I just find it strange, so I want to have a look. If I get anything, I will definitely report it to your Highness." She really felt strange. The painting was excellent and very meticulous. However, judging from the color of the paint and the moisture of the color, she could tell that it was a new painting of the Guanyin statue. It was the Empress Dowager's order that Pushun Nun was going to enter the imperial palace. Even if she wanted to cultivate in seclusion, she couldn't. However, this painting was strange. Why did she draw it in a hurry? Did Xiao Yenru ask her to draw it before? Even if Xiao Yenru asked her to draw it, she didn't have to be in a hurry. If Pushun Nun wanted to enter the imperial palace, Xiao Yenru would have a chance to enter the imperial palace in the future. Moreover, with Xiao Yenru's arrogance, she probably thought that the imperial palace would be her world in the future. It was not difficult for her to get a painting from Pushun Nun. Since it was not Xiao Yenru who asked her to draw it, it must be Pushun Nun's idea. She was in such a hurry to give it to Xiao Yenru before going down the mountain, which inexplicably made people feel that something was wrong. Your Highness, I'll take it and go back to have a look. Xiao Wanru stood up, took the painting scroll and bowed deeply to Chu Luchen. It was still early, so she had to go back and check it carefully. Go ahead. Chu Luchen waved his hand and didn't make things difficult for her this time. Xiao Wanru turned to leave, but suddenly stopped at the door. She turned her head in a hurry and found that Chu Luchen was looking at her with his head propped on his hand. She held the painting scroll in her hand uneasily. Your Highness, Xiao Yanru has gone to see Pushun Nun just now. If she had seen it, she would have known that the painting scroll was in your hands. It doesn't matter. She can't see it. My people are there. Chu Luchen said with a smile, elegant and leisurely. Of course, it would be better if there were no red and swollen marks on his handsome face, which even girls would be jealous of. Xiao Wanru nodded guiltily and hurriedly turned to leave, for fear that he would think of it again. The two maids outside the door had been waiting there for a long time. Looking at the paintings in Qing Er's hands, Xiao Wanru was slightly stunned. Miss, these are the paintings you left here before. I'll help you carry them over. Most of your paintings are over there, so it's convenient for you to clean them up. Qing He stepped forward and bowed to Xiao Wanru with the paintings in her arms. Xiao Wanru nodded and handed the paintings in her hands to Qing He, who held them in her arms. Xiao Xuanzi sent them to the gate and watched Xiao Wanru and her maid leave reluctantly. He really wished that the fifth miss could talk with His Highness more. Chapter 561. When his master courted death all day long, he was worried about his health. Now that his master stopped courting death, he had to worry about his marriage. Now that his master's marriage was about to be finalized, he was worried about when his master could get married and when he could hold the little master. Xiao Xuanzi felt so tired. Come in. A cold voice came from the main room. Xiao Xuanzi, who looked a little decadent, immediately cheered up and hurriedly answered, Master, I'll come in right away. In fact, he liked to worry about his master. Didn't this mean that his master trusted him? When Xiao Wanru returned to the courtyard, she saw that the door of the main room was open. Xiao Yanru had come back. She looked away calmly and went to the silence room with her maid. As soon as she stepped on the steps, she heard Xiao Yanru's voice behind her. Where did you go, fifth sister? She turned around and saw Xiao Yanru coming from the corridor with a smile on her face. I went to the previous room and asked Qing to clean up the previous paintings. Xiao Wanru stood still calmly and said with a smile after she came over. Can I have a look at fifth sister's paintings? Xiao Yanru said with a smile. Xiao Wanru nodded and said, Big sister, please come in and sit down. After saying that, she stepped into the silence room, followed by Xiao Yanru. Then Qing gave the paintings to Yujie and left. She was an inferior maid, so it was inconvenient for her to serve in the room. Yujie, show a painting to first miss and let her comment on it. Xiao Wanru sat down and ordered. Yujie randomly picked a painting and put it on the table. She was about to take the other paintings away. Wait. Xiao Yanru stopped Yujie, turned to Xiao Wanru and said with a smile, I heard that fifth sister's paintings are extraordinary. Can you let me have a look at them? Maybe I can find a place for me to learn from. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart. She knew that Xiao Yanru suspected her and wanted to see all these paintings. Big sister, my paintings are not good. They are just works in my spare time. They can't be compared with those of Big Sister and Pushun Nun. I regret it just now. If I had gone to Pushun Nun's place with you, I might have been able to ask her for a painting. Everyone in the Yuhui nunnery knows that Pushun Nun's paintings are the best. Big sister has inherited her skills, so your paintings are naturally outstanding. Xiao Wanru said politely. Chu Lu served tea. Xiao Wanru took a cup and took a sip. Then she waved to Yujie, and Yujie left. Xiao Yanru had intended to ask her to stay, but seeing Xiao Wanru's tactful refusal, she knew that she couldn't force it. He pushed the teacup away and unfurled the painting in his hand. It was a painting of a landscape, and it seemed to be the scenery outside the window. Mountains surrounded each other, and the scenery was pleasant. In the distance, there were layers upon layers of clouds, and it made people feel relaxed and happy. She pushed the teacup away and unfolded the painting in her hand. It was a landscape painting, which seemed to be the scenery outside the window. Surrounded by mountains, the scenery was pleasant. In the distance, there were layers of painting surrounded by clouds, which made people feel relaxed and happy. Xiao Yanru had suspected that the painting in the album was not good. She thought that Xiao Wanru, who occupied her silence room with a serious look, must be excellent. Now she thought that Xiao Wanru's painting was just to fool the layman. Even those who bought paintings on the street were much better than hers. She had suspected that the painting in the album last time was not bad. Could it be that someone had painted it according to the painting, and then directly took it down the mountain and asked a master to bind it up overnight? If that was the case, it could only be painted by Xiao Wanru. But now, her painting skills were really not good enough. Even if she painted Pushun Nun's painting, it would not look like anything. Xiao Yanru was very confident in her painting skills, so she despised Xiao Wanru's painting more and more. However, she showed a kind smile and nodded repeatedly. "Sister, you are really good at painting. The scenery seems to be alive. Such a painting can be compared with famous masters' works. Sister, why don't you take this painting as a birthday gift for Grandma?" In fact, old Madam's birthday hadn't come yet. It should be after Xiao Wanru went down the mountain. Will Grandma like it? Xiao Wanru looked hesitant. How can she not like it? Anyone will like such a good painting. If someone knows that it was painted by you, they will definitely praise you for your filial piety. Xiao Yanru flattered Xiao Wanru more and more. Well, I'll find someone to frame it and send it to Grandma. Xiao Wanru said softly with a sweet smile on her face. It could be seen that she was also very happy. Xiao Yanru's painting skills had always been praised by others. If Xiao Yanru approved of it, of course, her painting was very good. Seeing that Xiao Wanru asked Chu Lu to take the painting away carefully and said that she would ask a famous master to frame it, Xiao Yanru sneered in her heart. This kind of painting was framed by a famous master. The more famous the master was, the more people would think that Xiao Wanru was not only ignorant but also bullied others by taking advantage of her power. Xiao Wanru could only be her stepping stone. She would ask her grandma to hang the painting out and let all the guests in the hall see what a good-for-nothing fifth Miss Xiao was. Not only was she a good-for-nothing, but she was also arrogant and couldn't see herself clearly. Not only did she have no talent, but she even bullied others by taking advantage of her power. For this reason, Xiao Wanru could only be her stepping stone. It was enough for her to be the only outstanding miss of Duke Xing's mansion. No one else could stand out. Originally, she wanted to see a few more paintings. Now thinking that they were all the same, she thought that there was nothing to worry about. It seemed that the one who framed Pushun Nun's painting album should be someone else. Xiao Wanru didn't have this ability or this ability. Thinking of this, she felt relieved. She and Xiao Wanru were born to be enemies. At the first sight of Xiao Wanru, she regarded her as a formidable enemy in her life. Looking at Xiao Wanru's face, her eyes became cold. Her face was so beautiful that it made her uneasy. Even if she didn't put on any rouge, her face was as white as jade. She had long and curly eyelashes, a pair of watery eyes under the long eyelashes, jade-like skin, and red cherry lips without any rouge. When she looked at others, she looked elegant and pure, with a kind of natural charm. Everything in front of her reminded her that the beauty of the person in front of her would definitely affect her reputation as the first beauty. If it was just the vanity of the first beauty, Xiao Yanru didn't think that she would care about it. But if it was related to her future, she could only be the first beauty. She clenched her fists hard under her sleeves. Perhaps she shouldn't ruin Xiao Wanru's reputation. What she should do was to ruin Xiao Wanru's face. When Xiao Wanru's face was ruined, she would ruin Xiao Wanru's reputation slowly and then trample Xiao Wanru to death. Big sister, big sister. Xiao Wanru's voice brought her back to her senses. She hurriedly picked up the tea beside her and took a sip to disguise herself. However, she drank it in a hurry and the tea was still hot. It was so hot that she cried out in surprise. The teacup in her hand fell heavily on the table, and the tea tipped over her dress. Shuqi hurriedly came over to clean it up for her. "Big sister, your dress is wet." Xiao Wanru looked at the large patch of clothes on her chest and reminded her. "I'm really sorry. I've dirtied your dress." Xiao Yanru stood up with the help of Shuqi. Feeling painful and embarrassed, she shook her clothes and forced herself to calm down and said, "First miss, your hand is scalded." Shuqi saw a red mark on Xiao Yanru's white and tender hand at a glance and said anxiously. Xiao Yanru raised her hand and found that her hand was burning with pain. The red mark was not small and seemed to be bulging. "Big sister, I'm afraid that your hand will be blistered." Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Xiao Yanru's hand and reminded her. I'll go back and apply the ointment." Xiao Yanru said with a pale face and a burning pain on her hand. The area of the red mark was not small. She put down the cup in a hurry just now, so the hot water got on her hand. "Big sister, I have ointment here." Xiao Wanru said with a smile. "No, I also have ointment." Xiao Yanru said in a hurry, turned her head and left with Shuqi. How dare she use Xiao Wanru's ointment? After returning to the room, she sat down in front of the table and watched Shuqi clean up her burn, feeling angry and annoyed at the moment. "Miss, we didn't bring any ointment for burns. If there is a scar, what should we do?" Shuqi said anxiously as she cleaned the wound. "Go down the mountain immediately and go back to the mansion to ask mother for the best ointment." Xiao Yanru said with a cold look. "Yes, I'll go right away." Shuqi put down the handkerchief, nodded, and was about to leave. "Wait a minute. Tell my mother that I want 2 kinds of ointment. One is the best, and the other, just tell my mother that Xiao Wanru also hurt her hand." Xiao Yanru calmed down and stopped Shuqi. "Okay, I got it." Shuqi answered and left. It became quiet in the room. Xiao Yanru reached out to take the handkerchief and pressed it. A trace of coldness flashed across her eyes. Her hand was hurt, which might be an opportunity. That face was really annoying, and she didn't like it very much. In the main room. "Miss, do you really want to mount this painting and ask Great Elder Princess to ask a famous painter to mount it?" Yujia unfolded the painting in her hand and said. This painting was indeed painted by Xiao Wanru, but there were 2 such paintings, which were almost identical. Even Yujia, who didn't know how to paint, knew that this painting was not good. Her master had painted it for fun before. After painting the 2 paintings, she had left them in the yard and didn't bring them here. In fact, not only these 2 paintings were identical, but there were also several paintings which were the same. Yujia didn't know what her master meant. It could have been painted very well, but she made an ordinary one. When the first miss wanted to see it, Yujia got Xiao Wanru's hint and showed the ordinary one to the first Mississippi. "Yes, mount it. Mount both of them. Ask a famous painter to mount it together." Xiao Wanru said casually. It was originally an idle chess piece, which might not be used. When she was painting it, she had an idea, so she had several paintings, which were all the same. However, one of them was very ordinary, while the other one was very excellent. This was a gap, but no one would take advantage of it with good intentions. Chapter 562. Ask Chu Lu to do it. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said. "Okay, I'll tell Chu Lu when she comes back." Yujia looked out of the window and said. Chu Lu had gone to get some ointment, but she hadn't come back yet. Yujia wondered if something had happened. "Bring me the painting painted by Pushun Nun," Xiao Wanru ordered. She always felt that the painting was mysterious, so there seemed to be a deeper meaning for it to be sent to Xiao Yanru in a hurry. Yujia answered, rolled up the painting in her hand, and then went behind the screen to take out the painting of Pushun Nun. Xiao Wanru looked at the portrait of the thousand-hand guanyin carefully and reached out to touch the paper. It was made of good paper, which should be expensive. Of course, if the paper was good, it would feel good when she touched it, and it was easier to collect. In history, many masterpieces left by famous artists were made of good paper. Otherwise, they would have been gone long ago, and how could they be left to later generations? As far as paper was concerned, it was a masterpiece that could be left to later generations. The ink used was also very good, with a faint ink fragrance. Then there was the painting. The painting of thousand-hand guanyin was very vivid, and there were some objects used to exorcise demons in Buddhist legends. Although Xiao Wanru had read a lot of ancient books on the mountain, it was impossible for her to be so proficient that there was a story in each hand. With so many objects, there should be a lot of legends. She didn't find anything from the beginning to the end. There was only a small seal on the paper, which didn't look like the word Pushun. It should be Pushun Nun's private seal. If she had another name, she couldn't distinguish the characters on it at the moment because the private seal was too small. It seemed to be Lan, but also seemed to be Quan. There was another character that was even smaller and couldn't be seen clearly. It seemed to be Lan, or Quan. The characters didn't seem to be ordinary. Xiao Wanru was puzzled. After looking at it carefully for a while, she didn't find the mystery in it. She couldn't understand it and couldn't see it clearly. She could only continue to look up, but she didn't find anything. There seemed to be nothing wrong with the painting. She put down the painting in her hand helplessly and heard a voice at the door. She raised her voice and shouted, "Chu Lu." Chu Lu had just come back. Knowing that Xiao Wanru was appreciating the painting inside, she didn't dare to come in and report it. She only told Yujie about what she had seen in Mingxiu Nun's room. Hearing Xiao Wanru calling her, she hurried in. After bowing to Xiao Wanru, she put the ointment on the table and said, "Miss, when I went to get the ointment, I saw a man in Mingxiu Nun's Zen room." "A man?" Xiao Wanru asked casually, "Is he here to see a nun?" Although Mingxiu Nun was not well known, the nuns in the nunnery all knew her. Did outsiders also know her? He didn't come to see Nun Nun. It seems that he has an old grudge against Nun Nun. Nun Nun ignored him, but he didn't say anything. He just sat in Nun Nun's quiet room and kept talking to Nun Nun. When I went in, I was waiting for him to leave, but he was not in a hurry. I was anxious, so I asked someone to inform Mingxiu Nun. Then Mingxiu Nun asked me to go there. When she heard that I wanted ointment, she gave it to me, so I came back late. Chu Lu reported. Did you hear what he said? Xiao Wanru's face darkened. She couldn't let anyone disturb Mingxiu Nun's quiet cultivation. When I went in, the man stopped and I didn't know what he said. But when I left, I heard him mention Miss, so I deliberately slowed down a little, Chu Lu said. What did he say about me? Xiao Wanru was surprised. She didn't expect that the man knew about her. Not only did he know about her, but he also knew about the relationship between Mingxiu Nun and her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mentioned her in front of Mingxiu Nun. He said that the fifth miss is really a very good person, and he also said. Chu Lu said as she thought. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. By the way, I also heard the man talk about medical skills and asked Mingxiu Nun if the acupuncture book she got when she was young was still there. Chu Lu heard this when she was about to go out. The man was talking to Mingxiu Nun, but Mingxiu Nun ignored him, so it seemed that he had been talking to himself. However, even if he was talking to himself, he still spoke very enthusiastically, as if he didn't know that Mingxiu Nun didn't want to talk to him. He continued to talk about things one by one. He looked like a very elegant person, but she didn't know why he was like a fool and couldn't understand why others didn't want to talk to him. Miss, why don't I go and have a look? Yujie also followed in at this time and said worriedly. She had followed Mingxiu Nun for so many years, and Mingxiu Nun was her only relative, so how could she not be worried? No need. I think I know who it is. Xiao Wanru suddenly smiled and shook her head. Who is so blind? Yujie said angrily. You have seen him too, Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and hinted, he has excellent medical skills, and he also knows my relationship with Mingqiu Nan. There were many people with excellent medical skills, but only the people of Prince Chen's mansion who had excellent medical skills and knew the relationship between Xiao Wanru and Mingqiu Nan. Thinking of this, Yujie immediately knew. She suddenly widened her eyes and said in disbelief, is it Dr. Qi of Prince Chen's mansion? In Xiao Xuanzi's opinion, that miracle-working doctor was like a god. When they were on duty outside, Xiao Xuanzi often told Yujie about the ability of this miracle-working doctor. Therefore, although Yujie had met him once, she still remembered him vividly. Now hearing Xiao Wanru's words, she also opened her mouth wide. Was that miracle-working Dr. Qi really the same person as Chulu said? Miss, how is this possible? Mingqiu Nun has been in Jiangzhou, and I heard that Dr. Qi has been in Prince Chen's mansion for a long time. How could he be the same person? Yujie said in surprise. Xiao Wanru smiled and said nothing. When she was in Jiangzhou, Mingqiu Nun sometimes faintly showed that she didn't come to the capital city, which seemed to have something to do with a person. She remembered that Chu Luqian had said in private that Dr. Qi and Mingqiu Nun's medical skills seemed to complement each other, which was of great benefit to his health. It seemed that they were from the same sect. If all these were right, it seemed that Mingqiu Nun didn't come to the capital city because of Dr. Qi. Xiao Wanru originally only had some doubts, but now she basically confirmed it. After meeting Dr. Qi that day, she knew that he should be a very arrogant person. Even if such a person came to him for help, it was rare for him to say anything. Even in front of Chu Luqian, he dared to throw Mingqiu Nun away when he was angry. Now he kept talking in front of Mingqiu Nun. Needless to say, he was naturally an acquaintance. And he was very familiar with her. Chu Luqian was on the mountain today, so it was normal for Dr. Qi to follow him. We don't have to worry about it. Mingqiu Nun can do whatever she wants. After thinking it through, Xiao Wanru told Yujie. She knew Yujie's character best. If Yujie really did something when she was angry, it would not be good. It was better to wait and see. As for Mingqiu Nun, if possible, Xiao Wanru still hoped that she would not be alone for the rest of her life. But Yujie was still a little worried and felt that she had to see it with her own eyes. No buts. Chulu, take the paintings down the mountain and ask Grandma to ask someone to mount them. Xiao Wanru waved her hand slightly and ordered. Yujie had told Chulu at the door just now. At this time, she took the order and left. She went behind the screen to find the two paintings and carried them out. Well, it's okay. If you really want to see it, you can go and have a look, but you are not allowed to do it. It's Mingqiu Nun's business. Xiao Wanru looked at Yujie, who had a bitter face, and said helplessly, pinching her head. Thank you, Mississippi, don't worry. I just want to see if it is Dr. Qi. If it is, I will come back and will never disturb him. As soon as Yujie heard that Xiao Wanru would let her go, she was excited and immediately promised her. Then she followed Chulu out. When she came to the corridor and saw that Chulu had reached the door, she ran a few steps and said, Chulu, wait for me. Let's go out together. Are you going down the mountain too? Chulu asked with the paintings in her arms. No, I'm going to see Mingqiu Nun. Let's go together. Yujie ran to Chulu, shook her hand and answered. It was naturally good to have someone to talk with while walking. Chulu nodded and put the other painting in Yujie's hand with a smile. Look, one painting for each of us. In this way, even if someone sees you, he will not think that you are eavesdropping on them on purpose. What are you talking about? I'm worried about Mingqiu Nun. Yujie said with a smile, but still took the painting. The two of them told Qing, who was in the courtyard, and went out of the courtyard together. The two of them walked for a while, talking and laughing. When they were about to turn a door, a woman suddenly bumped into them from the opposite side. Yujie was faster. Although she was frightened, she still took Chulu 2 steps back and happened to avoid the woman who bumped into them. The woman on the opposite side was not so lucky. When she saw them, it was too late for her to stop. She staggered and fell to the ground, holding her leg and crying out in pain. The two maids looked at each other. Yujie took a step forward and asked, "Excuse me, are you okay?" "I'm not okay at all. You bumped into me and didn't help me up. You are so rude." The woman raised her face and said angrily. It turned out that she was a delicate girl, but she didn't look very good. She glared at the two maids, as if she was venting her anger on them. Judging from her clothes, she seemed to be a miss, but there was no one else around her, so the two maids couldn't figure out her identity for a while. Chulu came over and reached out to help her up, while apologizing, "Miss, I'm very sorry. When you bumped into us just now, we didn't notice you." Her words were extremely polite, but she also made it clear that it was not them who wanted to bump into others, but the woman who bumped into them. Chapter 563. This woman was really rude, and Yujie and Chulu were also angry. Yujie said rudely, "Miss, you are strange. It was you who bumped into the wall and fell. We didn't even touch you. How could you blackmail us? How dare you say that? Let's go and find someone to judge. Let's see whether you or me are wrong." The woman was so angry that she trembled. She came over and pulled Chulu and Yujie to go out in an aggressive manner. A few more people appeared at the corner. Seeing the situation here, someone suddenly shouted, "Hurry up, hurry up. Miss is here. Someone bullied our Mississippi, how dare you bully our Miss? Go up and beat her." Another woman said. The current situation was not good. Yujie handed the paintings in her hand to Chulu and then winked at her. When the woman who pulled them was overjoyed, she struggled hard to get rid of the woman's hand, turned around and ran away with Chulu. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. It was obvious that the woman had brought a lot of servant girls and old maids. Even if they stayed here and made things clear in the end, the two paintings in their hands would probably be lost. These were the portraits that the miss was going to send down the mountain to be mounted, so they couldn't be lost. Yujie was originally a strong girl. Although Chulu was not as strong as her, she was not an ordinary girl. She had worked a lot when she was young. Pulled by Yujie, the two of them ran very fast and disappeared in a few turns. The woman shouted behind them with her servants, but she didn't catch up with them in the end. Seeing that no one chased after them, Yujie and Chulu changed their direction and went out. This time, they were very careful, for fear that they would meet the rude and unreasonable miss again. Fortunately, they had lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time, so they were familiar with some small paths and shortcuts. This time, they specially chose the remote path. Yujie was worried, so she specially sent Chulu to the gate of the nunnery. After watching Chulu go down the mountain, she returned to the nunnery and went to Mingxiu Nun's place. Mingxiu Nun also accepted two disciples in the Yuhui nunnery, Huixian and Huiding. Both of them were from the Hui generation. The older Huixian was the senior sister, and the younger Huijing was the junior sister. They helped Mingxiu Nun manage the affairs on the mountain. As soon as Yujie turned to the front of the courtyard, she saw Huixian and Huiding standing at the gate of the courtyard with worried faces. She hurriedly took 2 steps forward and asked, "Nuns, I heard that someone came to Mingxiu Nun. Can they leave now? He hasn't left yet. I don't know what's going on. He hasn't left yet." The younger Huiding nun was an impatient person. After hearing her question, she pointed to the courtyard and said. Yujie carefully went to the door of the courtyard and looked inside. When she saw the scene inside, she was a little happy. Sitting at the stone table in the courtyard was indeed Dr. Qi, whom she knew. However, Dr. Qi, who looked very graceful in the past, now looked a little embarrassed. He was wet all over, as if someone had poured a basin of water on him, which was really not very dignified. However, he still had the heart to leisurely drink tea in such wet clothes and talk to the quiet room from time to time. The door of the quiet room was closed tightly, as if there was no one inside. None inside? Yujie blinked her eyes and shrank her head back. She felt funny in her heart, but she couldn't show it on her face. She could only show a very curious look. Yes, I'm so annoyed by him. I don't know where he comes from. He is so thick-skinned. He is really shameless, Huiding Nun said angrily. Junior sister, don't talk nonsense. Huisian Nun reprimanded her in a low voice. Senior sister, look at this person. I told him that master is going to meditate, but he still doesn't leave. He is really. If others see him, they will say something about our master. Huiding stamped her feet angrily. Looking at the little nun, Yujie suddenly remembered what happened on the mountain that day. She felt very close to her. However, when she was in Jingxin Monastery, she didn't have such a bad thing. Can you ask the abbess to drive him away? She thought for a while and reminded with a smile. No, I have already told the abbess, but the abbess said that he is a distinguished guest and can't be driven away. Huiding felt more and more angry. She thought that when she went to talk to the abbess didn't see her. She only asked a senior sister to reply, which meant that she must not provoke the distinguished guest. Therefore, even if she wanted to drag him away now, she could not do so. I'll go and have a look. Yujie was going to leave, but after thinking about it, she suggested. Okay, thank you, benefactor Yujie. Huiding was overjoyed. She put her palms together and thanked Yujie repeatedly. The two nuns knew Yujie. They knew that she was the personal principal maid of the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion. She had a good relationship with their master in the past. It was said that she came from Jiangzhou like their master, so they naturally had the affection of fellow countrymen. It would be best if she could come forward. No matter who was inside, Yujie had not only Duke Xing's mansion but also Rui and Great Elder Princess's mansion behind her. For this reason, the distinguished guest inside did not dare to offend her. Yujie nodded and turned into the yard. Dr. Qi was still talking in the yard when he heard someone call behind him, Dr. Qi. Looking back, he didn't recognize Yujie for a moment. After looking her up and down for a few times, he still felt that she was a little familiar. Whose servant girl are you? How do you know me? He was Chu Liuchen's servant. In the past, he didn't go out of the mansion to meet guests. Even if he went out, he just walked around as an ordinary servant of Prince Chen's mansion. Very few people knew his real identity. Dr. Qi, you're really forgetful. I'm the servant of the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion. I've met you with the fifth miss before. Yujie bowed and said with a smile. The servant of the fifth miss Xiao. Of course, Dr. Qi knew who the fifth miss Xiao was. He heard from Xiao Xuanzi that she was the Princess Chen who had been decided internally. He had also seen her more than 2 years ago, but she was very young. It was said that his master came to the Yuhui nunnery for her this time. Yes. Yujie said with a smile. Did the fifth miss ask you to come here? Dr. Qi asked with a smile. His body was wet, but he didn't seem to know that he was actually in a mess. He pushed back a strand of hair that fell on his forehead. It's not our fifth miss who asked me to come here. It just so happens that I have something to talk to Mingqiu Nun. Dr. Qi, you don't look good. Mingqiu Nun is the most straightforward person. If you stay here like this, she will definitely get angrier. Yujie pointed at Dr. Qi's wet clothes and said. Dr. Qi, you don't look good. If you stay here like this, those who know will think that you don't want to change, but those who don't know will think that you want to frame our Mingqiu Nun. That's why you are so wet. If pilgrims see this, it will be improper, and it will make Mingqiu Nun have a bad reputation. Mingqiu Nun was originally a guest in the Yuhui nunnery. Compared with the original nuns in the nunnery, she, who came from Jiangzhou, is less intimate. If you continue to be like this, Yujie covered her nose with a handkerchief in disgust and took a step back. Before she finished her words, the meaning in her words was revealed. Dr. Qi was stunned for a moment. It seemed that he didn't expect that Mingqiu Nun would have such a hard time in the Yuhui nunnery. After a little hesitation, he stood up. Junior sister apprentice, I'll go first. He cupped his hands to salute the tightly closed door of the quiet room, and then turned his head and walked out reluctantly. Seeing that although Dr. Chi's clothes were still wet, he became the arrogant Dr. Chi that she had seen in Prince Chen's mansion before. Yujie blinked and said to herself, Junior sister apprentice. Sure enough, Miss guessed right. There was something between Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Chi. She had followed Mingqiu Nun for so many years, but she had never heard Mingqiu Nun mention that she had a senior brother. Was this senior brother apprentice? Seeing that Dr. Chi finally left, the senior and junior sisters at the door were overjoyed. They hurriedly came in and pulled Yujie to the door, for fear of disturbing Mingqiu Nun's meditation, and thanked Yujie profusely. Yujie looked at the tightly closed quiet room and knew that Mingqiu Nun might not want to see anyone at this time, so she didn't disturb her. After saying a few words with senior sister apprentice Hui Xian and Hui Ding, she left. This time, because there was no music and no annoying picture scroll, Yujie did not hide. She went to the place where the woman had fallen before. Along the way, she also asked people if there had been any pilgrims who had fallen. All the nuns she met shook their heads and said that there was no such thing. When she came to the place where the woman had fallen, there was no one there. It was very quiet. Looking around, she found that there was only a small lonely Buddha hall on the side. In fact, this place was close to the edge of the Yuhui nunnery. The large Buddha halls were located on the peripheral central axis of the Yuhui nunnery. Only some small Buddha halls, which were not for the popular bodhisattvas, were in the small side Buddha halls. The number of incense offerings here was not as good as those big Buddha halls. Because it was too remote, even if people entered the Yuhui nunnery, they might not necessarily go here, so this place was very remote. Yujie and Chu Luo were just maids, and for convenience, they often liked to go out from here. In this small Buddha hall, there was a bodhisattva that even Yujie couldn't tell the name of. When she was in the Jingxin nunnery, there must have been no such thing. Yujie walked in and saw a small bodhisattva and an altar, on which there were incense sticks and candles. The incense sticks were lit, but there were no candles. It was obvious that there was no one here, so the candles were useless in case they were wasted. When chatting with Yujie, a young nun in the Yuhui nunnery had said that a few incense sticks were enough in such a small Buddha hall, and there was no need for incense sticks and candles. Looking up at the Buddha statue, she found that it was a ferocious-looking man with a brush and a fork in his hand. He was stepping on a mount that looked like a fish but not like a fish. Other than that, she couldn't see anything else. After looking at it, Yujie turned around and walked back. This was originally an accident, and she didn't take it seriously. It was just an arrogant miss who blamed others for her fall. Later, when she couldn't find Yujie, she was too embarrassed to make a fuss about it. Chapter 564. When she returned to the yard, Xiao Wanru was still studying the painting. She flipped it over and over, but she couldn't find anything. She even tried to look at it in the light from the window with the help of the light, but she still found nothing. After Yujie reported the matter of Dr. Chi to her, she also helped to check it. Compared with Xiao Wanru, Yujie had stayed in the nunnery for a longer time and knew more about Buddhism. However, no matter how they compared and categorized it, they still couldn't find anything. In the end, Xiao Wanru had no choice but to use the old method to draw the painting according to the painting. When Qing brought dinner, Xiao Wanru finished painting and put the two paintings together. If it weren't for the fact that one had a seal under it and the other didn't, they would look exactly the same. Looking at the private seal that she couldn't recognize, Xiao Wanru suddenly asked, Yujie, is there Pushun Nun's private seal on the album? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and shook her head with certainty, there's no one in the album. How could there be no one? Don't people with private seals like to print their private seals on their paintings? Xiao Wanru asked in surprise. The reason why she asked this was that she suddenly felt that she should also engrave a private seal, so that she could stamp it on the paintings she admired in the future. Maybe she thinks that the way the paintings are placed in the album is a little too unscrupulous. Yujie thought for a while and answered. The way the paintings were placed was for pilgrims to choose. Was it really the reason? Xiao Wanru had an intuition that it was not the reason, but she couldn't find another reason at the moment. Later, after thinking for a while, she simply drew the words on the private seal carefully. Miss, first Mrs. Servant Shuqi hasn't come back yet. Qing came in and put down the food box in her hand. Xiao Wanru paused and asked, hasn't she come back yet? It was already a little late outside the window. Yes, she should have come back. Qing nodded. Xiao Wanru put down the writing brush in her hand, and Yujia packed up the album for her. She went to the side to wash her hands. After washing her hands, she lowered her eyelashes thoughtfully and thought for a while. After thinking for a while, she told Qing, go ahead and have a look. If Shuqi comes back, try to stop her. Since it's late, let her come back a little later. Shall I go now? Qing asked in confusion. Yes, let's go now. Xiao Wanru nodded. Qing accepted the order and left in a hurry. Like Xiao Wanru's other personal maids, Qing became more and more convinced of her master's capability after seeing her master's means. Since Miss said so, she must have her reasons. It was not a big deal for Qing to stop Shuqi from coming. Xiao Wanru sat down, cleaned her hands with a handkerchief and said, Yujia, you should leave for a while and go to the Ministry of Justice to inquire about the Taoist priest from the Baiyun Taoist temple. Tell them that I sent you to inquire about it. If you see Lord Qiu, mention implicitly that the first miss hasn't eaten yet. How could she not take advantage of such a good opportunity? Just leave Miss here alone. Yujia was really worried and hesitated. If you leave, Xiao Yanru won't be able to find someone to help her. When you come back later, no matter what Xiao Yanru is doing, stay aside and don't let her find you. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully. She was safe here. Qing had long told her that there were 2 secret guards following her, but she couldn't see them in the past. If she was really in danger, they would definitely come to her rescue. As for asking Yujia to stay aside, she didn't want to get anything on Xiao Yanru at this time. Some things could be left slowly. How could a person like Xiao Yanru let go of a person who could be used? Even if she didn't use them now, she could use them in the future. The Ministry of Justice was not a small yamen. Hearing the hidden meaning in Xiao Wanru's words, Yujia was still a little worried. All 3 maids had been sent out, leaving only her master. How could she rest assured? Later, under Xiao Wanru's repeated urging, she turned around helplessly and hurried outside to find the people left by the Ministry of Justice. Xiao Yanru stayed in her room and waited for a long time, but no one came. She looked out of the window and found that it was already late. At this moment, she felt hungry. However, because Shuqi was not here, no one even brought her dinner. In the past, servants like her, who had servants to serve them, often asked the servants to bring it themselves. Looking at the sky outside the window, Xiao Yanru couldn't bear to sit still anymore. She got up, walked to the corridor, and looked around the yard. She was a little surprised that she didn't see Qing, who had been sweeping the floor with a big broom. This inferior maid usually seemed to be very diligent. Why was she not here today? Could it be that Xiao Wanru asked her to bring dinner? She turned around and walked to Xiao Wanru's silence room. As soon as she walked to the door of the room, a fragrance came over her, making Xiao Yanru feel even hungrier. She lifted her dress and entered the room. Seeing that there was only Xiao Wanru in the room, she asked, "Where are your maids?" Xiao Yanru asked as she walked in. Xiao Wanru after dinner, there were only some leftovers left. Because no one cleaned them up, they were still on the table. Xiao Wanru took a book and flipped through it casually, feeling comfortable. Hearing Xiao Yanru's voice, Xiao Wanru raised her eyes, looked at her, and said, "I sent them out for something. When will they come back?" Xiao Yanru hesitated for a moment and asked. "I really don't know. Judging from the situation, the one who was sent down the mountain to mount the painting probably won't come back tonight," Xiao Wanru said slowly. Xiao Yanru glanced at the food again and really felt hungry. When will they come back? She was a miss from an aristocratic family, so she couldn't go and ask by herself. It would be too improper. It should be more than an hour later at the earliest. Big sister, what's the matter? Xiao Wanru put down the book in her hand and asked. Xiao Yanru glanced at the cover of Xiao Wanru's book and pursed her lips in disdain. This book was obviously an ordinary script without any elegance. Can they come back earlier? Well, I don't think so. I can't go to find them directly now. Xiao Wanru shook her head helplessly. Seeing Xiao Yanru's bad look, she asked again, Big sister, what's the matter? Nothing. I just came to see you. Xiao Yanru turned around and said. Since Xiao Wanru was useless here, she certainly wouldn't stay. Looking at the time, if she didn't go to get the dinner, the kitchen of the Yuhui nunnery would be closed. Xiao Yanru naturally didn't want to starve for a night. Coming out of the silence room, she walked to the gate of the courtyard and opened the gate after thinking for a while. She wanted to see if there was a nun outside. She could find a nun and ask her to bring the dinner for her. She could give her a little more silver. It was already late. Fortunately, the lights outside the courtyard were lit. Xiao Yanru walked to the gate of the courtyard and stood still for a while. She didn't see anyone, so she could only walk out along the intersection, hoping to meet a nun. After taking a few steps, a person suddenly came out from behind the tree. Xiao Yanru was so scared that her face turned pale. She staggered and almost fell down. Was Xiao Wanru trying to hurt her? First miss, it's me. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'll bring you dinner. She was hugged by a man and heard his low voice. After standing still in the man's arms, Xiao Yanru reached out and pushed the man away. After taking a few steps back, she saw clearly that the man was Qiu Yu and felt relieved. But then she said with a straight face, Your Excellency, why do you show up here at this time? First miss, don't be afraid. The fifth miss sent someone to ask about the case of the Baiyun Taoist temple. I specially asked you about it. Knowing that your servant girl was not here and no one even brought you dinner, I hurriedly brought it here for you. Qiu Yu stood a few steps away from Xiao Yanru. Seeing Xiao Yanru's dignified and beautiful face, he couldn't help getting excited. He tried to calm down, reached out to pick up the food box placed aside, handed it to Xiao Yanru, and said with concern, If you don't get it, the kitchen of the Yuhui nunnery will be closed. Thank you, Your Excellency. After pulling herself together, Xiao Yanru reached out to take the food box, but she was not in a hurry to leave. Your Excellency, you said that my fifth sister asked her servant girl to inquire about the Baiyun Taoist temple from the Ministry of Justice? Yes, the fifth Miss Xiao was set up by the evil Taoist priest of the Baiyun Taoist temple before, so she specially asked us to inquire about it. But I'm not in charge of this matter, and I don't know the details. I can only tell the fifth Miss Xiao's servant girl to inform the fifth Miss Xiao immediately if there is any news. The beauty in his heart actually stayed to talk with him. Did this mean that the beauty also liked him? Qiu Yu was so excited that he would say whatever he wanted to say. It was not a secret, so of course he could say it as he wanted. The most important thing was to please the beauty. Fifth sister, why do you suddenly ask about this? Xiao Yanru's face slightly darkened. Maybe you think that since we are all from the Ministry of Justice, we should have something in common. But in fact, everyone handles different cases, so it is not convenient to tell others, even colleagues. Qiu Yu thought that Xiao Yanru didn't understand, so he explained gently. His words made sense. Many misses from aristocratic families didn't understand it, but Xiao Yanru didn't. Her education was not limited to the things that the misses in the backyard should learn. Thank you, Your Excellency. Then I'll leave first. Since she had inquired about the matter, Xiao Yanru certainly wouldn't stay, so she turned around and was about to leave. First miss, please wait a minute. Seeing that the beauty was about to leave, Qiu Yu couldn't help saying with an infatuated look. Infatuated look. He looked at Xiao Yenru with an infatuated look. The girl in front of him almost completely met his requirements for his wife. But Duke Xing's mansion's status was too high. Otherwise, he would have sent someone to propose marriage. But if he and the first Miss Xiao were in love with each other, even if it was impolite, would it be possible for him to propose marriage in this case? Your Excellency, what else can I do for you? Xiao Yenru tilted her head, but she didn't turn around. Her indifference was obvious. She didn't want to talk to Qiu Yu at this time. A man and a woman were alone in the lonely night. If they were seen by others, they would be gossiped about. How could Xiao Yenru bet on her reputation? No, nothing else. First Miss, take care. Seeing Xiao Yenru's indifference, Qiu Yu's warm heart suffered a great blow and he felt weak all over. It seemed that the first Miss Xiao didn't like him and wanted to keep a distance from him. Chapter 565. When Xiao Yenru came back with the lunchbox, she did not disturb Xiao Wanru. But shortly after she entered the door, Yujie, who followed her into the door, also did not disturb her. After gently closing the door of the courtyard and seeing that the door of the main room was closed, Yujie entered Xiao Wanru's silence room. Miss, I saw that Lord Qiu sent a lunchbox to the first Mississippi. At first, the first Miss was polite, but later, I found that the first Miss seemed to be interested in Lord Qiu. Yujie reported. Because of Xiao Wanru's hint, she was not surprised to see the two figures not far away from the door of the courtyard. She just hid and watched the whole scene. At first, the first Miss's character was the same as what Yujie knew, but then the first Miss looked a little undignified and smiled so charmingly at Lord Qiu. At first glance, Yujie could tell that Lord Qiu admired the first Miss, but the first Miss was not likely to marry him. In this case, of course, she should alienate him. Why did she feel that the two of them seemed to be in love with each other? Yujie's eyes had always been sharp. Even in the dim light at that time, she saw the excited look of Lord Qiu when the first Miss turned around and bowed. It was obvious that he was willing to do anything for the first Mississippi. Yujie had an intuition that she was in danger. Of course, she won't like Qiu Yu, but she can make use of him. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly and looked up at the door. It was very quiet outside, and the other maids had not come back. She wants Lord Qiu to help her. Yujie said bluntly. Most of the people in the Yuhui nunnery have left, and only Qiu Yu has a high official position. If he can help her, it will be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. Even if something happens, with Qiu Yu's love for her, he won't betray her. Xiao Wanru said leisurely. Miss, what should we do? Yujie was a little flustered. She grew up in the Jingxin nunnery, and the most common sentence that the master of the Jingxin nunnery said to her was that, people don't fight with officials. If Qiu Yu dealt with them, it would be difficult to handle. Don't worry. Qiu Yu is not a real fool and won't do anything at will. Xiao Yenru won't allow him to do anything at will. Qiu Yu will only take action at the necessary and critical moment. Xiao Wanru said slowly. Xiao Yenru definitely didn't have good intentions by staying on the mountain with Xiao Yenru and would definitely deal with Xiao Yenru. Qiu Yu deliberately sent this opportunity to Xiao Yenru. If she didn't know about it, she could indeed become Xiao Yenru's secret plan. But now she knew about it, so she could ask someone to keep an eye on it and make Xiao Yenru's secret plan her own. Yu. Qiu Yu Yenru Xiao Yu. Yu Xiao 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 Wood and Yenru Xiao Yenru came back. Not long after, Shuqi came back, supported by Qing Er. Yujie happened to meet her after cleaning up the dishes. Yujie said that when Shuqi entered the room, it was too dark, so she fell and twisted her ankle. That was why she came back late. Fortunately, Qing Er went to see if Chu Lu had come back. Then she happened to see Shuqi and helped her back. After Qing Er helped Shuqi to the main room, Qing Er came back and reported to Xiao Wanru. Miss, when I went out, I happened to meet Shuqi coming in, so I made her fall. After that, I went out of the nunnery and went to the door to have a look. Then I met Shuqi when I came back and helped her back. Did I make any trouble? It's okay. You and Yujie also go to have some food. I don't think Chu Lu will come back today. Xiao Wanru said with a smile. Yujie and Qing obeyed and left. Xiao Wanru got up to pick up Pushun Nun's painting and check it. She always felt that it was not an ordinary painting, but she couldn't find anything wrong with it. Yujie suddenly stopped at the door and said, "Miss, I encountered something before and felt that it was very strange. I want to talk to you about it." Yujie suddenly stopped at the door and said, "It was Qing, who made Shuqi fall on purpose just now," which reminded her of what had happened in the afternoon. Xiao Wanru sat down in front of the desk with the painting and asked, "What's the matter?" Yujie entered the room again and said, "Miss, when Chu Lu and I went out, we also met a woman who fell in front of us. We couldn't see either side of the road. If I hadn't pulled Chu Lu, the woman would have bumped into us." Yujie said while choosing her words, although the woman was dressed in gorgeous clothes and seemed to be extraordinary, she was not only arrogant but also faintly behaved like a street girl. She was very fierce and shrewd, not like a miss from an aristocratic family. However, when so many servant girls and old maids rushed out and tried to catch us, she seemed to be an arrogant miss from an aristocratic family. Yujie had lived on the mountain since she was a child, so she was much more knowledgeable than ordinary servant girls. After thinking about it carefully, she immediately found some doubtful points and reported them to Xiao Wanru. She didn't think it was a big deal before, but because of what happened to Qing, and Shuqi, the more Yujie thought about it, the more suspicious she became. I also asked the nuns in the nunnery later. They all said that there was no such miss and they had never heard of such a miss falling. It seemed that this miss had really magnanimously let me and Chu Lu go. But judging from her arrogant look at that time, all the servants chased after me and Chu Lu. No matter how I looked at it, she didn't look like a magnanimous miss. The more Yujie said, the more suspicious she became. She had only 1 or 2 doubts before, but now her doubts were magnified infinitely. Xiao Wanru raised her head and frowned slightly. After listening to Yujie's detailed account of the process, she thought about the scene at that time and asked, "You said that a large number of servant girls and old maids rushed out and rushed to you one by one. Did anyone go to see that, miss?" "No, I remember it very clearly. It was because everyone rushed over that I took Chu Li's hand and ran away. If I didn't run away, even if I was strong, I couldn't stop them. What's more, Chu Lu was there. At that time, even if you came forward, we would have been beaten and probably couldn't even keep the painting in our hands." Thinking of the situation at that time, Yujie still felt scared. Those servants looked like wolves and tigers. At first glance, she could tell that they were not good people. They seemed to be evil slaves raised by ordinary families. But it was quite surprising that all such evil slaves were sent to Xiao Wanru's side. No one went to check on their miss's injury. Instead, they all rushed to you. Xiao Wanru asked again. "Yes, it's like that. It's a very strange feeling. Besides, there is a very remote place. I don't know why this miss came here and happened to rush out. A miss from a noble family shouldn't walk slowly. Why did she rush to us like an anxious servant girl and then seem to blame us?" Yujie said angrily. "Do you still remember that place?" Xiao Wanru asked after thinking for a while. Among the few servant girls, Yujie was the most observant and could even be compared with Qing, who had been specially trained. It had something to do with her time in Jingxin Monastery. After seeing many people, she could naturally distinguish the differences between some different kinds of people. "I remember." Yujie nodded. "Take me to have a look tomorrow," Xiao Wanru said. There must be something behind it. Although she didn't know what it was, it seemed to be related to her now. Xiao Wanru went to bed very late at night. But even so, she still didn't find anything. Later, she had no choice but to roll up the painting and go to bed. When she got up the next day, it was still early. She asked Yujie to knock on Xiao Yenru's door with the painting and send it to her, saying that someone sent it here just now and that Pushun Nun asked Prince Chen to send it to her. Shuqi had gotten up, but Xiao Yanru didn't get up. However, the knocking on the door woke her up. When Shuqi came in with the painting, she also got up. Hearing the sound on the bed, Shuqi hurriedly put down the painting in her hand, came over, lifted the gauze curtain, and helped Xiao Yanru up. What happened just now? Xiao Yanru asked. It's Yujie, second Mrs. Servant. She said that someone sent by Prince Chen to send a painting of Pushun Nun to the first miss, Shuqi said. A gift from Pushun Nun? Xiao Yanru frowned. When she went to see Pushun Nun yesterday, she didn't see her. The door was guarded by the guards of Prince Chen's mansion, who said that Pushun Nun was packing up her things and was about to go down the mountain to enter the imperial palace. If it weren't the guards of Prince Chen's mansion who came this time, Xiao Yanru would definitely not come back so obediently. However, the guards inside were from Prince Chen's mansion, so she didn't dare to do that. Prince Chen had always been temperamental and didn't have tender feelings for women. Who knew whether he would order her to be thrown out? At that time, she would be the one to lose face. As the first beauty, if it was said that she was thrown out, it would be a stain on her life. She couldn't have any stain on her. She had to be perfect. After coming back pretentiously, she didn't disturb Pushun Nun anymore. In fact, it didn't matter to her whether she saw Pushun Nun or not. It was Pushun Nun's intention to let her see her before she entered the imperial palace. Now the painting was sent to her, which explained why Pushun Nun had asked her to go there. She got up from the bed, walked to the painting with her hair down, and asked Shuqi to help her. After a careful look, she found that the private seal below was indeed Pushun Nun's. She had seen Pushun Nun use the seal. Pushun Nun painted very few paintings, and even fewer of them used the seal. Xiao Yanru had learned painting from Pushun Nun for a period of time, and Pushun Nun had taught her a lot. Occasionally, she would paint a painting by herself, but this kind of painting basically didn't need the seal. Only once did she see Pushun Nun use the private seal, which she had seen accidentally. Later, she had asked to see Pushun Nun's private seal in surprise. She still couldn't recognize the characters on it, but Pushun Nun refused. Pushun Nun only said that the characters were just like characters, which were carved by a close friend of hers when she was young, and it was not a name. Because the characters didn't look like characters, the characters looked light and didn't look like characters. Chapter 566. Since Pushun Nun said so, Xiao Yanru certainly wouldn't ask to see the painting again. She didn't see the painting with her private seal again. Unexpectedly, she saw a painting with Pushun Nun's private seal. It seemed that the painting was used differently for Pushun Nun. Since it was sent here, just put it aside. Xiao Yanru said casually. Shuqi answered and went to wash up. After washing up, Xiao Yanru went to see Xiao Wanru after breakfast, but was told that Xiao Wanru hadn't gotten up yet. She had no choice but to go back to her room and wait for a while. After waiting for a while, Xiao Yanru heard some sounds from the silence room. Xiao Yanru went over again. This time, Xiao Wanru had already gotten up. After washing up, she was eating porridge. Seeing Xiao Yanru come over, she warmly invited her to eat some. Xiao Yanru just shook her head with a smile and said that she had already eaten some. Xiao Wanru didn't eat much. After taking a few sips, she put it down. Yujie quietly cleaned up the breakfast. Fifth sister, this is the ointment I brought from the mansion. I heard that it was given by the imperial palace. Your hand is injured, so is mine. I can use both of them. Look, I only used a little last night, but I recovered so quickly. Xiao Yanru said with a smile and reached out her hand. Her hand was scalded. It wasn't too serious, but because her skin was white and tender, it looked red and blistered. Yesterday, it looked a little scary, but today, it didn't seem to be a big problem. Although it was also red, the blisters didn't swell. It was just a little swollen. Xiao Yanru said, took a jade bottle from Shuqi, put it in front of Xiao Wanru, and said, Fifth sister, you can also use some. I don't need it. I've almost recovered. Xiao Wanru refused politely. In fact, there was no bleeding on her hand, but there were some small scratches and a suspicious bite mark, but she couldn't let others see it. So she wrapped her hand. When she got up just now, Yujie had already wrapped her hand with a handkerchief. There will be scars even if you have almost recovered. It is said that after you use this ointment, your skin will be as good as before and there will be no scars. Xiao Yenru introduced softly and pushed the jade bottle in front of Xiao Wanru. If that was the case, then it would be hard to refuse such kindness. Well, thank you, big sister. I'll ask Yujie to change the dressing for me in a while. She has just applied the dressing, so forget it. Xiao Wanru reached out to take the jade bottle with a smile. The sooner you use it, the better. Xiao Yenru said with an even gentler look. Thank you for your kindness, big sister. I know. I heard that big sister got a painting of Pushun Nun today. I wonder if I can have a look. Xiao Wanru smiled more warmly and changed the topic calmly. She really didn't dare to use the ointment sent by Xiao Yenru casually. This painting was entrusted to me by Pushun Nun before. It's not mine, so please forgive me, fifth sister. I'm afraid I can't show it to you for the time being. When I meet Pushun Nun in the future, I will definitely explain this matter. If Pushun Nun agrees, I will let fifth sister see it again, okay? Xiao Yenru's smile was very decent. She seemed to be in a dilemma but would stand up for Xiao Wanru. It was hard to believe that there was viciousness behind her beautiful face. Thank you, big sister. Xiao Wanru said insincerely. She reached out to pick up a scroll of scriptures beside her and said, Big sister, do you want to recite scriptures with me? This time, it was really a scripture. Xiao Yenru despised her in her heart. When she came here yesterday, she was reading a script, but today she took out a scripture seriously and said, I don't know how to recite scriptures very well. I'd better copy some Buddhist scriptures to offer later. However, I've been copying Buddhist scriptures on the mountain all the time, and sometimes I'm very tired. Fifth sister, do you have any good scripts to read? Scripts? How could I have any? There are only scriptures and scriptures. Xiao Wanru took a wooden fish handed over by Yujie, tapped it gently, looked up at Xiao Yenru, and said with a straight face, Big sister, you must be joking. I'm being reckless. I thought I should read these when I'm bored on the mountain. If you really don't have any, I'll go to copy Buddhist scriptures. Xiao Yenru naturally didn't believe Xiao Wanru's words, but she didn't show it on her face, as if she would believe whatever Xiao Wanru said. She didn't even feel that Xiao Wanru's attitude became cold because of her question. She glanced at the silence room and found that there were really not many things in it. There were a few books on the desk by the window, which looked like scriptures, but she didn't know what was in the drawer under the desk. She couldn't tell what was in it at the moment, but she guessed that there must be scripts in it. That was good. The more things Xiao Wanru had, the better. If there weren't any, she wanted to send some here. When she glanced back, she looked at the locked box in the corner. The box was not big and placed in the corner, so no one would notice it at ordinary times. At this moment, there were some writing brushes and inkstones placed casually on it, so it seemed that no one would touch it. She was very satisfied with it. After leaving Xiao Wanru's room, she stood in the corridor and thought for a while. Then she said to Shichi, Let's go to the nunnery and ask for some Buddhist scriptures. Yes, miss. Shichi answered, and the master and the servant left slowly one after another. She didn't want to stay here and listen to Xiao Wanru's monotonous sound of the wooden fish, which was not only boring but also uncomfortable. Ask Qing, to follow them. Xiao Wanru had already knocked the wooden fish in her hand, but she also heard Xiao Yenru's words at the door and gave an order to Yujie beside her. Then she became serious and began to chant the scriptures in a low voice. When Yujie came out, Xiao Yenru and the servant had already left the courtyard. She whispered Xiao Wanru's words to Qing, in the courtyard. Qing, answered, put down the broom in her hand, and followed them out of the courtyard. Xiao Yenru went to the back mountain casually. The scenery at the back mountain was much better than that in the front yard. She liked to paint at the back mountain in the future. It was autumn now, and the scenery in autumn was a little different from the red leaves all over the mountain. The red leaves were mixed with green leaves, and some summer flowers were in full bloom. With the wind blowing, the heat of summer had faded, which made people feel inexplicably relaxed and comfortable. "Miss, someone is painting here." Shuchi suddenly pointed to a place in front of them and said. A man was painting with his back to them. It was really surprising that a man could come in such a place. In the past, few men came here, and even some female pilgrims seldom came here. The nuns would point them to several other places with excellent scenery. Although they were all in the back mountain, it was a little far from here. After all, it was too close to the other side of the high wall. It was a serious crime to disturb the cultivation of the former emperor's s. Since there was a man here, Xiao Yenru couldn't go forward, so she chose a path on the side leading to the top. The path was not big, but the scenery was excellent, and Xiao Yenru was in a good mood. There was a huge stone in front of her. Xiao Yenru was about to turn around the huge stone when she suddenly saw a person turn around behind the huge stone. First Miss Xiao. The woman who turned around bowed to Xiao Yenru respectfully. Miss Mo. Xiao Yenru recognized the person in front of her. She was Mo Chui, who lived not far away. They had met in Pushun Nun's place in the past. It seemed that Miss Mo was a distant relative of Pushun Nun and lived in the Yuhui nunnery because of Pushun Nun. However, few people in the nunnery knew about it, and they all thought that she was a relative of Pushun Nun's disciple. Xiao Yenru knew it because Pushun Nun told her frankly. First Miss Xiao, does Pushun Nun leave any paintings? I left the mountain before and came here today. I didn't see Pushun Nun. I heard that you were here, so I specially came to ask about her. I was going to go to the courtyard, but I didn't expect to meet you here, Mo Chui said happily. Xiao Yenru looked at Mo Chui and the two maids behind Mo Chui, and her eyes darkened a little. In the past, Mo Chui, like Xiao Wanru on the mountain, was dressed in a simple black robe without any distinguishing features. Although Mo Chui was also good-looking, she was not outstanding in Xiao Yenru's eyes. Today, Mo Chui, who had changed her clothes into a light pink dress and put on some light makeup, looked like a completely different person from before. At first glance, she still looked the same, but after a closer look, she seemed to be a completely different person. Not only did she look much more beautiful than before, but her aura also seemed to be different. Together with the two maids behind her, no matter how she looked at it, she seemed to be the young ladies from aristocratic families who used to play with her. Miss Mo, why are you dressed like this? Xiao Yenru said in surprise. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would really think that the two of them were not the same person. I found my biological uncle. My uncle and aunt asked me to go down the mountain to their mansion. Thinking of Pushun Nun's care for me in the past, they specially prepared a gift for me. I didn't expect that Pushun Nun was not here. She said that she would draw a 1,000-hand guanyin painting for me, but I don't know whether it is in the hands of the first Miss Xiao. Mo Chui changed the topic and asked with a soft smile. Yes, there is one, but I don't know whether it was given to you by Pushun Nun or not. She left in a hurry, so she directly sent the painting to me without meeting me. Xiao Yenru said vaguely. Pushun Nun did not say that she would give her the painting. The painting came suddenly, so she actually wondered whether it was sent by someone else. However, it didn't seem to be sent by Pushun Nun when she saw the private seal of Pushun Nun. Hearing Mo Chui's words, it seemed to be the case. It must be. She said that she would draw it like this, and it was just a sketch at that time. Hearing that it was really in the hands of Xiao Yenru, Mo Chui breathed a sigh of relief, took out a very simple sketch from her bosom and said. Xiao Yenru reached out to take it. It was very simple with only a few strokes, but she could tell that it should be the same as the one in her hand. She nodded at once and said with a smile, "It is indeed like this. In this case, come with me. I will give you the painting. First Miss, I lived in the Yuhui nunnery for a period of time, but my uncle and aunt thought that I should not live in the nunnery since I had my own uncle, so they don't want others to talk about my past. I hope that you can ask your maid to go there, lest the nuns in the nunnery see me and make my uncle and aunt unhappy with more rumors. Chapter 567. If a miss from an aristocratic family entered the nunnery to observe filial piety like Xiao Wanru, her reputation would be excellent and she would be respected. However, if a miss had to live in the nunnery because her family was poor and she had no relatives to rely on, even if her relatives found her, her reputation would be bad. Some people would even doubt whether her family education was bad. If Imo Chiui's uncle and aunt were worried about this and didn't want Imo Chiui to appear in front of the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery, it was reasonable. Shuchi, go and get the painting. Xiao Yenru handed the sketch in her hand back to Imo Chiui and ordered Shuchi softly. Miss, there is no one else here after I leave. Shuchi looked at Imo Chiui and the two maids behind her and said warily. First miss, can you let my maid go with your maid? Imo Chiui said with a smile. Okay. Xiao Yenru said with a smile and then said to Shuchi, it doesn't matter. I haven't seen you for a long time. Let's take this opportunity to chat. Hearing her first miss say so, Shuchi had no choice but to leave in a hurry. Imo Chiui waved her hand and a maid followed her. Miss Imo, who is your uncle? Where does he work? Xiao Yenru looked at Imo Chiui curiously and said, if I didn't have a predestined relationship with you in the Yuhui nunnery, I'm afraid that I couldn't recognize you. My uncle is just a lowly official. He is nothing in your eyes, but he is my only closest relative in the world. Fortunately, I have him. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I can't go down the mountain in my life and can only spend the rest of my life in the Yuhui nunnery. Imo Chiui smiled bitterly and looked up at the scenery in front of her. They were in a high position now, so they could see most of the scenery of the Yuhui nunnery. Miss Imo, now the bitterness has come to an end. What happened in the Yuhui nunnery is just an experience. There is no sweetness without wind and rain. What do you think, Miss Imo? Xiao Yenru said gently with an increasingly elegant smile and comforted her. Imo Chiui turned her head, looked at Xiao Yenru's gentle and dignified smile, and felt grateful in her heart. She bowed deeply to Xiao Yenru and said, First Miss Xiao, thank you for your comfort. Although she was the daughter of an official now, there was still a big gap between her and Duke Xing's mansion. Imo Chiui was very moved that Xiao Yenru treated her so kindly and even tried to comfort her. Since she went to her uncle's mansion, although an etiquette instructor had taught her again, her situation was not good. Her uncle also had children. Although he really took good care of her, her cousins were not easy to deal with. They always thought of various reasons to humiliate her. Xiao Yenru, on the other hand, moved her a little. It doesn't matter whether I comfort you or not. I just see that you are a little sad. If I go to the foot of the mountain someday, you can come to me if you have nothing to do. Xiao Yenru became increasingly gentle and said with a soft smile. This meant that she wanted to befriend Imo Chiui. With her status, befriending a woman from a small official's mansion was really too much for Imo Chiui. First Miss Xiao, thank you. Imo Chiui expressed her gratitude again and deeply regretted that she didn't befriend Xiao Yenru on the mountain at that time. If they had befriended each other earlier, it would have been a good thing for her. One of them intended to befriend Xiao Yenru, while the other smiled eagerly and talked happily. After a while, Shuchi came with the painting. Imo Chiui took it, looked at it carefully, and was overjoyed. She expressed her gratitude to Xiao Yenru again and then went down the mountain with the two maids. Xiao Yenru stood on the mountain and watched them leave, and the smile on her face slowly faded. Miss, why did you give the painting to her? Pushun Nun didn't explicitly say that it was not for you. Shuchi felt indignant for her master and said. Pushun Nun's painting could not be obtained easily. Since it was sent to her master, why couldn't it be for her master? Moreover, it was a painting with a private seal. As Xiao Yenru's personal maid, Shuchi naturally knew that her master didn't have a painting with Pushun Nun's private seal in her hands. Why did she give it to her master? Did the maid do anything unusual after she went with you? Xiao Yenru said lightly without looking back. She kept asking about the 5th Mississippi. It seemed that she didn't go with me to get the painting, but for the 5th Mississippi. After entering the courtyard, she even took the initiative to stay in the courtyard and looked around. At first glance, I could tell that she was up to no good. I found her very eye-catching, Shuchi said angrily. Shuchi said angrily. It was fine that this servant girl inquired about the 5th Miss on the way, but she also looked around outside the 5th Miss Silence room. She didn't look like the principal servant girl of the 5th Miss at all. Even an inferior servant girl was a bit smarter. Have you said everything you should say? Xiao Yenru raised the corner of her mouth with a sneer. I've said everything you want. Miss, don't you think it's very strange? No one has paid attention to her for so many years. She has lived here for 5 years. Suddenly, her biological uncle popped up and was willing to raise her. Why didn't he bring her here earlier? It's really unreasonable for him to bring her here now instead of bringing her here earlier. Shuchi said suspiciously. Do you also think it's suspicious? Xiao Yenru walked back slowly. It was almost time for her to go back. Shuchi followed her closely and nodded. I do think it's suspicious. Since it has nothing to do with us, we don't have to ask about it. Just wait and see. It's a good interest to be interested in the 5th sister. Let's wait and see. If they can fight with each other until they die, it has nothing to do with me, Xiao Yenru said casually. First Miss, is there anything wrong with Pushun Nun? Shuchi's heart skipped a beat and her face turned a little pale. Pushun Nun had a special relationship with her 1st Mississippi. If there was something wrong with Pushun Nun, her 1st Miss would be implicated. No matter what, it has nothing to do with us. I just want to learn painting. Xiao Yenru said meaningfully. She glanced at the high wall below, which was not high from the inside. She could also see the courtyards behind the high wall. There were really a lot of S of the former emperor. Seeing Xiao Yenru turn in that direction, Shuchi also turned her eyes and sighed. The S who have no children are really pitiful. Xiao Yenru turned her cold eyes back and continued to look at it. Having no children in the imperial harem meant that one would become a stepping stone for others, and she would also enter the imperial harem. But there was one thing she was sure of, that was, the path she was going to take was different from that of the people below. She was destined to step on all kinds of stepping stones to reach the highest position. Miss, I saw Miss Mo, who lived over there before. It said that she has lived there for 5 years. She dressed completely differently, but I recognized her at a glance. She and the 1st Miss were talking happily. Because there was no one over there, I didn't dare to get close and couldn't hear what they were talking about. But they were very happy. After that, Shuchi brought back a painting scroll with Miss Mo's maid. Qing reported to Xiao Wanru. She came back after Xiao Yenru, but she was an inferior servant. The servant girl was the most inconspicuous one in the entire courtyard, and she was agile. Even if she followed Xiao Yenru, Qing wouldn't notice her. Miss Mo. The Miss Mo who begged my grandma before. Xiao Wanru's face slowly darkened. She rolled her watery eyes and put down the wooden fish in her hand. Yes, that's her. She didn't look like the peasant girl on the mountain at that time. She was dressed like a miss, followed by 2 servant girls. She left after taking the painting scroll, Qing said. Xiao Wanru fell silent. She always felt that it was not simple and it was not just a matter of a painting scroll. That painting scroll is the one that Pushun Nun intended to give to Xiao Yenru. Not long after Xiao Yenru got it, it was taken away by someone. Xiao Yenru gave it to her without saying anything and even talked happily with her. Xiao Wanru whispered softly. When Shuchi came to take the painting, Yujie had already seen it and reported it to Xiao Wanru. Miss, Pushun Nun didn't intend to give the painting to the 1st Miss, but to Miss Mo. However, at that time, Prince's men had appeared, so it was inconvenient for Pushun Nun to give it to Miss Mo directly, so she asked the first miss to do it. Ching rolled her eyes and strung together a series of strange things. However, after saying this, she felt that it was impossible. It seemed that it should not be strung together in this way. Pushun Nun's painting was not shameful, and she could have asked other nuns to leave it for Mo Chui. Why did she go to such a big circle? Moreover, the first miss looked very surprised, so she didn't ask Shuchi to take the painting scroll in advance. She was far away at that time, but she still saw that Mo Chui seemed to show something to Xiao Yenru, and then Xiao Yenru agreed to let Shuchi take the painting scroll. Was there any proof in it? It was just a painting. Did it need so much proof? The painting should be given to Mo Chui. As for why she asked Xiao Yenru for it, it might be because His Highness was there, or she didn't want His Highness to notice the painting or the person. Of course, there might be other reasons. In short, she didn't want others to notice her. Ching ask someone to keep an eye on Mo Chui and see if there's anything strange about her. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and gave an order. She always felt that Mo Chui was very strange. She had thought that Mo Chui had secretly gone down the mountain and had nothing to do with what happened after that. However, it was obvious that she was wrong. Seeing that Mo Chui's maid kept looking at her in the yard and even wanted to sneak over to have a look, she knew that Mo Chui was paying attention to her. No matter what Mo Chui's current identity was, it had nothing to do with her. How could Mo Chui pay so much attention to her when she came to get the painting? In the past, they didn't have much contact. At most, Mo Chui bowed to her when they met, and she just nodded with a smile. Why did Mo Chui suddenly pay so much attention to her? Thinking of the matter that Mo Chui knelt down to beg her grandma that day, she felt that there was something fishy about it. Yes, Mississippi. I'll do it in a minute. Ching answered. Chapter 568. Ching who was about to turn around and leave, stopped. Yujie, why do you say so? Xiao Wanru tilted her head and asked with a smile. I think. Recalling what had happened yesterday, Yujie chose her words carefully. That woman fell down and then rushed over with a lot of people. If they really caught us, they would definitely beat us up. At that time, no one would care about the paintings. Even if the 2 paintings were lost, Miss would not be able to do anything when she saw us being beaten like this. Besides, I also asked the people of the Yuhui nunnery after that, and they all said that no one made a scene. If the 2 paintings were taken away at that time, would they not be able to find them? That place was remote and no one saw it. Even if something happened, as long as others didn't say it, no one would know. In fact, Yujie didn't have any real evidence. If it weren't for Ching's words just now, she couldn't even think of such a possibility. He couldn't think of such a possibility, but he felt that this matter was very mysterious. The overly arrogant miss rushed out and didn't protect her master first. Instead, she chased after her and Chu Li's servants and later asked about the trace. It was very mysterious. She felt that it was the case, but she didn't have any real evidence, which made her feel very depressed. If they did it for the paintings, why did they do it? Pushun Nun originally intended to give the paintings to First Mississippi. She could have asked First Miss for them directly. Why did they make such a scene? Ching asked in confusion. Could it be that they thought that the painting had been taken by Miss and was going to be sent down the mountain, so they were anxious and used this method? Yujie said. After saying that, she felt that even she didn't believe it herself. However, Xiao Wanru fell silent. She stood up, walked to the window, took out the copied painting from the painting jar beside her, unfolded it on the table, and looked at it carefully. She frowned slightly. She had looked at it for a long time yesterday, but she didn't find anything wrong with it. But the current situation really showed that there was something wrong with the painting, and the problem was not small. Let's go out for a walk. Let's go to the place where you and Chu Lu met yesterday. After looking at it for a long time, Xiao Wanru, who still found nothing, put down the painting and said. She couldn't find anything wrong in a short time, so she could only put it aside for now. Yes, miss. Yujie nodded and followed Xiao Wanru out of the door. There was still no one in this remote place. The conflict yesterday made Yujie feel like she was in a dream. There was no trace of it here. They went to the small Buddhist hall at the back to have a look. They walked around the altar several times but found nothing unusual. Everything was normal, as if Yujie's guess was false. However, Xiao Wanru felt that there was an invisible thread in it, but she couldn't find it at the moment. After going back, after thinking for a while, she asked Yujie to take the painting with her and go down the mountain to tell Chu Luchen about what she and Chu Lu had encountered, as well as what Qing had seen about Xiao Yenru. She also left the painting with him. Chu Lu happened to come back at this time. Yujie obeyed and went down the mountain in a carriage. Miss, I came back late because I heard something on the street and specially inquired about it, so I came back late. Chu Lu also took some things that Great Elder Princess asked her to bring up the mountain for Xiao Wanru. After putting them down, she was so tired that she was panting. Qing handed her a handkerchief. She took it and wiped her face. What's the news? Xiao Wanru asked. The matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple has been figured out. I heard that it is a big deal. The whole capital city is in an uproar. Some families who specially invited Taoist Shushui to their mansions are in an uproar. The Baiyun Taoist temple has also rescued many women who were locked up, some of whom have been locked up for several years. Chu Lu took a breath and said. The shock this time was really great. Not only ordinary people but also big aristocratic families were shocked. The misses and madams of aristocratic families were the most distinguished. They usually stayed in the backyard and rarely went to the front yard. Ordinary people couldn't see them at all. However, it was said that Taoist Shoshui had a good relationship with several madams. Their mansions must be in an uproar. How about Duke Xing's mansion? This result was also expected. Unexpectedly, when Shichi's investigation was so fast and the matter was solved in this way. It was clean and tidy without any hesitation. Moreover, he directly exposed the case mercilessly. In his previous life, although this case was also uncovered, it wasn't this fast, nor was it this clean. In comparison, some of the public opinion had already been secretly blocked, or some of the big aristocratic families that were related to this case had already distanced themselves from it. The faster it was solved, the less likely it was to be tampered with. Of course, on the one hand, it was because of Wen Shiqi's intelligence. On the other hand, it was because of Wen Shiqi's identity. Even if his identity revealed something, others could not do anything to him. Although he was a rising noble who was valued by the emperor, his identity as the prime minister also made all forces very afraid. I heard that this matter broke out from Duke Xing's mansion. It is said that this evil Taoist Shoshui deceived the public and wanted to say that the fifth miss is an evildoer. I don't know who in Duke Xing's mansion secretly plotted with him. He smeared honey on the fifth miss's bracelets and longevity lock, which made the ants in the Yuhui nunnery climb up. The ants on the mountain are bigger than those at the foot of the mountain, which looks very creepy. He wanted to send the fifth miss to the Baiyun Taoist temple. Chu Lu said. She went down the mountain last night and stayed at the foot of the mountain for a night. Originally, she was going to go up the mountain early in the morning today. When she got out of the princess's mansion and heard people talking about this matter on the street, she immediately stopped the carriage, found a tea house, and sat inside to listen to gossip. Miss, everyone is guessing that it was done by old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion or Madam of Duke Xing. Some people say that it was done by third Madam of the mansion or other misses. Anyway, it is very unpleasant to hear. It is said that the evil Taoist Shoshui seduced a master in the mansion with his charm, and then there was such a show. Seduced by a man. Xiao Wanru showed a smile on her face. What he said made people think of many things. The evil Taoist Shoshui of the Baiyun Taoist temple was a man. If it was said that a man was seduced by a man, who in Duke Xing's mansion would be suspected of wearing a green hat? No matter which family this kind of thing happened, it would not be a good thing to hear. It seemed that Duke Xing's mansion had to deal with this matter. When Shichi made this matter so big and so fast, which could be regarded as a favor to her. Miss. I also heard that. Chu Lu said again, but she hesitated at this point. What's the matter? Xiao Wanru looked at her and asked in a good mood. I heard that among the families that are close to Baiyun Taoist Temple, there is Duke Yang's mansion. It is said that they are very close to Baiyun Taoist Temple. It has been like this for many years. Chu Lu stammered, but still made it clear. How many years? Xiao Wanru was also stunned for a moment. Duke Yang's mansion had not appeared in her memory for a long time. It seemed that since Qin Yuru married there, she had not paid attention to what happened there. In that case, even if Qin Yuru married there, she would not have a good life. I heard that it has been more than 10 years. It seems that, the master of the Baiyun Taoist Temple could gain a foothold in the capital city at the beginning because of Duke Yang's mansion, Chu Lu said. She heard that Duke Xing's mansion and Duke Yang's mansion were the most talked about. Duke Xing's mansion was the family in trouble now, while Duke Yang's mansion was the one that was most respected at the beginning. One of them was the beginning, while the other was the end. Compared with other aristocratic families, they were more easily criticized. Xiao Wanru was very surprised that this matter was related to Duke Yang's mansion. However, she did not pay attention to Duke Yang's mansion. After listening to it, she raised the corner of her mouth and said, the matter of Duke Yang's mansion has nothing to do with us, and Qin Yuru will not get me involved. However, I'm afraid that Duke Xing's mansion will send someone to show goodwill later. Miss, do we need to prepare anything? Chu Lu asked. No. You and Qing, go down later and close the door of my silence room. Tell them that I won't come out until I finish reading and copying the 3 volumes of scriptures today. I'm observing filial piety for my parents, so I can't be interrupted at will. If someone from Duke Xing's mansion comes, just use this excuse to refuse. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said. She did not want to see the people from Duke Xing's mansion at this moment, and she was even more unwilling to explain the matter of Duke Xing's mansion to others. She had to let the people from Duke Xing's mansion know that she was cultivating in seclusion and should not disturb her if there was nothing important. She had been on the mountain for so many years, and Duke Xing's mansion had been indifferent to her, as if she did not exist. Now she was involved in one thing after another. Yes, I know. Chu Lu nodded and hurried down with Qing. Qing continued to clean and tidy up the courtyard, while Chu Lu went to the wing room to get the embroidery shed and leisurely embroidery. Miss had said that they were not the ones who were anxious now. The people from Duke Xing's mansion came quickly. Chu Lu had only gone in to embroider a flower when she heard a noise coming from outside. Looking out of the window, she found that it was really a big scene. Duke Xing's mansion actually sent 4 servant girls with Nanny Sheng. They were sent by Madam of Duke Xing. Is the 5th miss inside? Nanny Sheng asked with a smile, and her attitude was extremely amiable. Qing looked at her blankly, and then looked at the 4 servant girls holding gift boxes behind her. After a long while, she said, our 5th miss is practicing in seclusion for heir of Duke Xing and Infanta. She is chanting scriptures and copying Buddhist chants inside. No one can disturb her. Madam sent me to bring some food to the 5th Mississippi. I won't disturb her for long, Nanny Sheng said with a smile. No, the 5th miss has ordered that no one can disturb her no matter who comes. Otherwise, it will be disrespectful to heir of Duke Xing and Infanta. Qing stubbornly blocked the door and said. She was slender, so she could not block the door. However, she had a big broom in her hand, which blocked the door with her body. Even if Nanny Sheng wanted to go over, she could not go over. Nanny Sheng did not dare to bear the crime of disrespect. Moreover, at present, Madam of Duke Xing certainly wanted to show her love for Xiao Wanru. Naturally, she could not force her way in, which would be seen by others. Suppressing the anger in her heart, Nanny Sheng continued to say kindly to an inferior servant girl, when will the 5th miss come out? It will be dinner time soon, or midnight soon. There are several volumes of scriptures to be read and copied, and they can't be interrupted in the middle of the night. Ching said seriously, with the broom in her hand in front of her, as if no one could rush in, which made Nanny Sheng so angry that smoke rose from her head. Chapter 569. But now she clearly knew that she couldn't get angry. She absolutely couldn't get angry. Madam wanted others to see her treat the fifth miss well, so she couldn't be angry. However, even though she repeatedly warned herself in her heart, Nanny Sheng still looked unhappy in front of the careless servant girl in front of her. The smile on her face faded, and her face darkened. Doesn't the fifth miss need to eat in the middle of the night? I have sent steamed buns with clear water. The fifth miss said that as long as she is sincere in cultivating, steamed buns with clear water can satisfy her hunger, and nothing else. Ching said insensitively, as if she didn't see Nanny Sheng's change of expression. Then I want to see the first miss. Nanny Sheng took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. The first miss just said that she wanted to copy scriptures for the heir of a duke and the infanta. She also copied them wholeheartedly, so she shouldn't be interrupted. Ching continued. Shuqi, who heard the noise in the corridor and was about to come over, stopped, turned around, and went into the room to report to Xiao Yanru. The fifth miss was sincerely reciting scriptures and copying scriptures, and she only brought steamed buns with clear water into the silence room. Her master was also copying scriptures. If she still met the people of Duke Xing's mansion, others would only think that her master was insincere or completely went through the motions, which was not good for the first miss's reputation. All the people around Xiao Yanru knew that she attached great importance to her reputation. If her reputation was accidentally ruined, Shuqi couldn't bear the responsibility. As expected, after getting inside and repeating what Qing had said to Nanny Sheng just now, Xiao Yanru became a little serious and said, "Please ask Nanny Sheng to go back. It's not appropriate for you to come in today. Fifth sister and I are going to recite scriptures and copy scriptures, so we can't be interrupted." "Yes, first miss." Shuqi answered and left, and then walked to the door. Nanny Sheng's face darkened after being annoyed by a servant girl who couldn't communicate with her for so long and didn't allow her to enter the courtyard. Now she saw Shuqi coming from a distance and was overjoyed. Finally, there was a smart person here. "Shuqi, come here." Nanny Sheng raised her voice and said. "Nanny Sheng." Shuqi came over, bowed to Nanny Sheng, and said with a smile. "Ask this girl to move aside and let me in. I brought some gifts for Fifth Mississippi. Now that Fifth Miss is cultivating in seclusion, I will send them to Eldest Mississippi. When Fifth Miss comes out of seclusion, I will ask Eldest Miss to send them over." Nanny Sheng said as she looked at the big broom coming at her with disgust. She was really a rude servant girl who didn't know anything. She was so vulgar and made people angry just by looking at her. If not for the fact that he was Fifth Miss's servant, she would have pulled him away by force. Shuqi sighed in her heart, thinking that Nanny Sheng was the smartest one in the past, but why was she not smart now? She said that Fifth Miss was cultivating in seclusion and the first miss had to pick up the things. She said it as if the first miss was idle and had no filial piety. This was bad for the first miss's reputation. Nanny Sheng, it's really impossible. The first miss is also meditating and copying scriptures for heir of duke and infanta. I'm afraid that she won't see you. Like the fifth miss, the first miss also brought water and steamed buns in. If Nanny Sheng had come earlier, the first miss would still be outside, but now it's impossible. Shuqi said with guilt on her face. You. Nanny Sheng was so angry that she wanted to spit blood this time. Her madam was anxious at the foot of the mountain, but nothing happened on the mountain. At this time, even the first miss did not help madam. Instead, she seemed to advance and retreat with the fifth miss, which really made Nanny Sheng speechless with anger. Stamping her feet hard, Nanny Sheng said angrily, Fine. I'll come next time." After that, she didn't say anything to Shuqi, turned around and left in a hurry. Several servant girls followed closely behind her, holding the gift boxes in their hands. They were still going back the way they came. Shuchi looked at Nanny Xing's angry face uneasily. She knew that she had offended Nanny Xing this time, but for the sake of the first Mrs. Good reputation, it was not convenient to let Nanny Xing come in at this time. It was not a big deal. She just sent some gifts, which was not worth a big deal. After thinking about it, she ignored Qing and turned back to the main room to report. Mother, why did you send Nanny Xing here in such a hurry? Did something happen again? Xiao Yanru didn't know that the matter of the Baiyun Taoist temple had been exposed and it was very bad for the reputation of Duke Xing's mansion. After frowning, she didn't take it seriously and just muttered to herself. She felt a little dissatisfied with her mother in her heart. Her reputation couldn't be ruined, not even by her mother. Hadn't she told her mother to stop for a while? Why didn't she stop after such a short time? She had got the ointment and was waiting for Xiao Wanru to use it. There were 2 bottles of the same ointment. One was for her own use. Of course, the one for her own use was good, while the one for Xiao Wanru was mixed with something. It was a royal gift from the Imperial Palace, but it was not directly given by the Imperial Palace. It was taken from Prince Yu and Prince Shou. One of the bottles had been mixed with something by Xiao Yanru and Madame of Duke Xing. She had just sent the ointment here, so she should avoid arousing suspicion at this time. What did her mother want to do? Xiao Yanru, who didn't understand, felt strange, but she just felt strange for a while and didn't pay too much attention to it. Since she had said that she would recite and copy scriptures with Xiao Wanru today, she naturally had to abide by it. Although the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery were not good at passing messages, the people of the Ministry of Justice were still there, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Nanny Xing came here with great fanfare just now, which must have alarmed the people of the Ministry of Justice. It was a good opportunity to make a name for her. With this in mind, she asked Shuchi to go to the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery and ask for a few more scriptures. It seemed that she was going to copy the scriptures sincerely. She showed her sincerity here, which also made people who knew about it praise her greatly. They increasingly felt that the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion was indeed talented and beautiful, decent and kind. Even her eldest uncle and aunt, who were in the next branch, were serious about filial piety and devoted to her as if she were their own daughter. She had a good reputation here, but Nanny Xing said something that annoyed Madame of Duke Xing. Seeing the gift boxes brought down by several servant girls, Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that she picked up the teacup at hand and scolded angrily, get out of here, all of you. Useless servant girls. Her words were very loud, and her elegant temperament in the past was swept away. The servant girls who brought the gifts were so scared that they retreated in panic. In the yard, they saw Duke, who was always smiling, striding in. His face was completely different from before. They did not dare to look at Duke Xing's face, which had changed a little due to anger. After hurriedly saluting, they all retreated into the yard. They were far away from the main room, but they did not dare to really walk away, trembling with fear that Madame would find them again later. Madame, don't worry. When we went up the mountain just now, we could have put down the gifts, but the first miss was unwilling to accept them. I'm afraid that she still doesn't know what happened at the foot of the mountain. If the first miss knows it, she will definitely accept the gift boxes next time. It will be much more convenient for the first miss to hand them over to the fifth miss. Only Nanny Xing was left in the room. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that her face turned pale, she knew that she was furious and hurriedly persuaded her. The fifth miss happily accepted the gifts from her madam, in order to show the harmonious relationship between madam and the fifth miss to the world. However, the gift boxes sent up the mountain were returned unopened, which was like a slap in madam's face. Nanny Xing was also angry that the first miss did not help madam but took the same path as the fifth Mississippi. But after thinking about it, she thought that it might be because the first miss did not know what happened at the Baiyun Taoist temple. If she knew it, she would definitely help madam. How dare you? You want to tell Ru about this kind of thing? Look at you, as a mother. You can't even do such a small thing well and even implicate Ru-er. The door was kicked heavily. The half-closed door was suddenly kicked open, and Duke Xing came in with anger. In the past, no matter how angry he was, Duke Xing could always put on a smiling face and looked easy to talk to. It was rare to see him so angry that his face changed. Nanny Sheng was Duke Xing's wet nurse. At the sight of Duke Xing, she knew that something bad was going to happen. She shrank her head and did not dare to say anything more. She stood behind Madame of Duke Xing and did not dare to move. The High Duke was really angry. Whatever he said would be wrong, so it was better for him to say nothing. Duke Xing walked in and sat down on the chair in the middle. He looked at Madame of Duke Xing coldly, slapped the table hard with his hand, and said sternly, "You should solve these bad things by yourselves. You can't get involved in Ru-er's affairs. She should do what she should do." Originally, she was supposed to cultivate in seclusion with 5th Mississippi. You always implicate her. If you ruin her reputation, can you afford to pay for it? His words were extremely rude. Madame of Duke Xing was in a bad mood. Being rebuked in front of her, she immediately blushed with anger. Unwilling to show weakness, she glared at Duke Xing and said, "This kind of thing? This kind of thing is my business. It is obviously done by your stupid mother. Now all the womenfolk in the mansion are implicated. If you have the ability, you can let her bear this reputation by herself, so that I don't have to make up for it here." Others didn't know, but Duke Xing and Madame of Duke Xing certainly knew that the cause of this matter was old Madame. Duke Xing's face darkened and he snorted coldly, "I don't care how you solve this matter or not, but I will never allow you to disturb Ru-er. Don't you know how important Ru-er's reputation is? Don't let Ru-er be criticized by others for some trivial matters." "But can I suppress this matter? The whole capital city is talking about the womenfolk in our mansion." I. Madame of Duke Xing was so angry that she was about to cry because of his contemptuous attitude. She pointed outside and said loudly. Her sharp voice made several servant girls and old maids serving outside tremble involuntarily. They stood there with their heads lowered like quails, pretending that they couldn't hear anything. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing was so angry, Duke Xing's face became a little better, perhaps because he felt that this matter was caused by his mother and he was in the wrong. But he still looked cold. "If you can't solve it, you can ask my mother. Pay attention, don't disturb Ru-er with this kind of thing." After saying that, he stood up and flicked his wide sleeves. A teacup on the table was swept to the ground by him, making a crisp sound of breaking. However, Duke Xing strode away without looking back. Chapter 570. Nanny Sheng hurriedly reached out to hold Madame of Duke Xing and helped her breathe on her back. It took Madame of Duke Xing a long time to recover. "Look, he doesn't care about anything, but he puts all the blame on me. If it's that woman, Madame." Nanny Sheng raised her voice in a panic and unconsciously looked at the open door. The door was open, and they could see 2 rows of servant girls and old maids standing in the yard. Although they were all respectful, Madame of Duke Xing's voice was uncontrollably louder just now. "Ask them to leave and keep their mouths shut, otherwise." Madame of Duke Xing also came to her senses at this time and glanced sternly at the servants in the yard. In fact, they were a little far away, so it was impossible for them to hear anything. There were a lot of people in the yard, otherwise she could kill them directly or find a reason to kill them. Seeing Madame of Duke Xing's terrible eyes, Nanny Sheng's eyes flashed with a trace of panic. She hurried to the door and said to the 2 rows of servants outside the yard, "Go away and keep your mouths shut. If you dare to say anything, we dare not." The servant girls and old maids hurriedly said, "Go away." Nanny Sheng waved her hand. The servant girls and old maids understood and all left the main room far away. No matter what they did, they could not get close to the main room. Seeing that there were no conspicuous people around, Nanny Sheng breathed a sigh of relief. After entering the door and closing it, she came to Madame of Duke Xing and persuaded, "Madame, don't talk about it. In fact, He is just crazy. It really doesn't bother you, madam. Crazy? A crazy woman is more important than me. I don't know what his brain is thinking. Her words not only failed to persuade Madame of Duke Xing, but also made her face turn blue with anger. She was a good wife at home and helped him solve all kinds of troubles, but he didn't take her seriously from beginning to end. This made Madame of Duke Xing, who had always felt that she was a winner, almost unable to control herself and wanted to smash everything in the room. He pushed all the things in Duke Xing's mansion to her and blamed her for not doing her best when something went wrong. He never put his mind on Duke Xing's mansion. Madam, let's tell old Madam about it now. This matter has become so serious that old Madam has to have her own rules. We can't let First Miss be tainted with a bad reputation. Seeing that Madame of Duke Xing couldn't control herself, Nanny Xing hurriedly changed the topic and left the matter to old Madam. Madame of Duke Xing's words touched her heart. She didn't want to implicate her daughter. Her son and daughter were the most precious to her and would be the most noble in this mansion in the future. She couldn't slack off at all. Let's go to find her. Madame of Duke Xing stood up and said with a cold face. She couldn't bear it, and she didn't want to bear it. It wasn't her fault in the first place. Why did the mother and son let her bear it with a clear conscience? After dressing up a little, Madame of Duke Xing took Nanny Xing to old Madame's Chuntang courtyard. Madam. Nanny, you had just finished serving old Madame's medicine. Seeing Madame of Duke Xing come in, she immediately bowed to her. Mother, how are you? Madame of Duke Xing forced a smile to Nanny Yu, walked to the bed, squatted in front of old Madame, and asked with concern. Old Madame raised her eyes and found that Madame of Duke Xing's face was pale and her expression was very ugly. Her clothes looked a little messy, which seemed to be done in a hurry. There were also faint tears in the corners of her eyes. What happened? Old Madame asked. Nanny Yu frowned tightly and looked at Madame of Duke Xing worriedly. Of course, what happened outside had also spread to Chuntang courtyard, but Nanny Yu was worried about old Madame's health, so she didn't let anyone tell her. But now Madame's intention should be to tell her the truth, right? Old Madame's health was not very good. She wanted to step forward, but she still lowered her head. Although she was a respectable servant, she was just a servant. Nanny Yu was very clear about this. Since she was a servant, she should listen to her master. Even if it was against her mind, she had to listen to her master. Old Madame was her master, and Madame was also her master. Mother, it is said that this evil Taoist priest Xiushui is a man, and he colludes with someone in our mansion to ruin the fifth Mrs. reputation. It is said that our mansion may have a close relationship with this evil Taoist priest, and even, may have a secret relationship with him. Hearing old Madame's question, Madame of Duke Xing's eyes immediately turned red, and her legs went soft. She knelt in front of the bed and said, Mother, if they only suspect me, it doesn't matter if I don't know it. But, poor unmarried girls in our mansion. They actually said that the evil Taoist priest Xiushui started from Duke Yong's mansion and our mansion. Madame of Duke Xing said and burst into tears. What? How could he be so vicious? Old Madame's hand heavily hit the edge of the bed, and her face turned livid with anger. Nanny Yu looked up at Madame of Duke Xing, and then at old Madame, who was so angry that blue veins stood out on her forehead, and then lowered her head. She also knew the news outside the mansion, and naturally knew that the most important thing now was Madame of Duke Xing. After all, she was in charge of the mansion. Although there were occasionally rumors about other masters, everyone thought that Madame of Duke Xing was the most credible one. In Nanny Yu's mind, this was just a rumor, and no one in the mansion believed it. Neither old Madame nor Duke Xing would believe that Madame would do this, so the rumor was just a rumor. Madame didn't need to make this matter known to old Madame with such great fanfare. She sighed softly and reminded herself again that she was just a servant, but her eyes still fell on old Madame. Mother, you don't know, right? It is said that this matter has even been brought to the Yuhui nunnery. Er's servant girl said yesterday that the people of the Ministry of Justice are also investigating this matter, and and his brother, even Duke is now, being gossiped about when he goes out. How can Duke keep a foothold in front of the ministers? Madame of Duke Xing began to sob. Hearing this, old Madame was angry and annoyed. She stretched out her trembling fingers and wanted to say something, but she felt that her chest was so stuffy that she couldn't even breathe. She breathed hard, and her face turned red. Something seemed to be blocked in her throat. Her eyes popped out, and she collapsed on the bed. Nanny Yu rushed over, pushed Madame of Duke Xing away, and said modestly, "Madam, old Madam has a relapse. Please wait a moment." After saying that, she ignored Madame of Duke Xing and held old Madame in her arms. She tried hard to soothe old Madame's breath in her chest, and asked the servant girl to get the pills. Fortunately, the pills were all prepared early. After taking the water from the pills, Nanny Yu carefully fed the water to old Madame. Seeing that old Madame's expression improved slightly, she breathed a sigh of relief. She patted old Madame's back and asked her to spit out a mouthful of phlegm in her throat. Only then did old Madame recover. Mother, how are you?" Madame of Duke Xing was also shocked. Of course, she didn't mean to scare old Madame. If something really happened, Duke Xing would not spare her. I'm fine." Although old Madame recovered, she still had a splitting headache, and her throat was even more astringent, which made her feel uncomfortable. You can go outside and say that I was deceived by others. I listened to people's words and mistakenly believed the words of scoundrels, so that fifth maid almost got into trouble. Old Madame said with difficulty. She reached out to cover her chest, but her old face showed a little gloomy. But who is the scoundrel? Who is the scoundrel in our mansion? Madame of Duke Xing seemed to be frightened and completely lost her usual shrewdness. She looked at old Madame with red eyes and asked her to make a decision. She wanted to find someone to pay off the debt. She wanted to see who old Madame would give up. This matter had become so big that someone had to pay for it. A servant's status was too low. Although it was not good to listen to people's words, it was better than the reputation of her grandchildren. In particular, the reputation of the children of the second branch could not be ruined, because all of them were beloved by old Madame. Your adopted daughter, old Madame said. She fell back and closed her eyes weakly. Madame of Duke Xing froze for a moment and immediately reacted. She asked tentatively, "Qi Rongji?" Yes, it's her. Let her pay for it. I heard that she had a bad relationship with fifth maid when she was in Qin's mansion, and it was even worse when she was in Jiangzhou. Old Madame said with her eyes closed. But she is a little girl who has not been in the capital city for a long time. She doesn't know about this, about Xiushui. Madame of Duke Xing was not reluctant to give up Qi Rongji, but she couldn't connect Qi Rongji with this matter. It was too far-fetched, which made people more suspicious. She only felt that Duke Xing's mansion pushed her to pay for it, and she was an adopted daughter, which was very unkind. Let her say that she heard it from others. Just say, she heard it from the eldest daughter of Qin's mansion, who is now married to Duke Yong's mansion. Since old Madame thought of Qi Rongji paying for it, she certainly thought of her background and origin. Madame of Duke Xing also mentioned it just now, which showed that Duke Yong's mansion was also very suspicious. In this case, it was also normal that this matter was initiated by Duke Yong's mansion. Although old Madame had not been in charge of affairs for many years, she also remembered something about Xiushui. At first, it seemed that it was indeed spread from Duke Yong's mansion. At that time, Countess Yong was still the current old Madame of Duke Yong. At several banquets, she repeatedly said that Xiushui's magic was brilliant. Thinking about it carefully, she did mean to help Xiushui to promote Xiushui. If you put the blame on Duke Yong's mansion, I am afraid that old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion will not let it go easily, right? Madame of Duke Xing said hesitantly. Although Duke Yong's mansion had declined, it still had some resources, so they could not be completely underestimated. I don't put the blame on them, but on Qi Rongji. As for what Qi Rongji will say, it depends on her. We have raised her for a few years in vain, so she has to do something. Isn't her elder brother very capable? Help her pass on the voice transmission and say that the one in Qin's mansion told her. Old Madam said coldly. Originally, it was a reluctant idea to admit Qi Rongji. This would let her repay the kindness, and it was reasonable. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.